We'll go ahead and call this this meeting to order. It is February 6th, 2025. This is our regularly scheduled City of Glenwood City Council meeting. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening.
Mayor Wusso.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dame. Councilor Godus.
Here.
Councilor Zelinski. Councilor Weimer.
Here.
Councilor Schachter. Councilor Sims. We have a quorum.
It's kind of redundant because I think if you can hear me, you're either here or you're on the YouTube channel. But as a reminder, Glenwood Springs City Council does have a YouTube channel. And the meetings, which are recorded and available afterwards, it is youtube.gov/@GWSCOGOV. Once again, that was youtube.com/@GWSCOGOV. That will give you an opportunity to watch the meetings later too, in the event that you miss something. So, very good. We'll go ahead and see if there are any agenda changes or conflicts. Councilor Godus. Thank you. Mhm.
Yes, thank you. Can we pull the two items, sorry, I don't have it up, pertaining to E and F? Thank you. No, not F.
D and E.
D and E, thank you.
Great. D and E. So, we have,
Is there a second? Do we need a second?
we don't really need a second.
McLean.
I would second it if there's enough.
There's no need to, just to pull something off consent I don't think require it. So, so I will look for a motion to, oh wait, hold on. We're gonna keep moving forward. Any council announcements? Okay, I see none. Any citizens appearing before council? These are for items that are not on this evening's agenda. Anyone here for something not on this evening's agenda? You have 3 minutes and we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
I will close citizen comments. Then I'll bring it back to council. Oh, you know what? Unfortunately, we don't take online comments for items not on the agenda. So that's only for agenda items further into this evening. So hopefully you can reach out. You're also welcome to send us an email at citycouncil@cogs.us. We'd love to hear from you, but our protocol does not allow comments for items not on the agenda remotely. Okay, I'll bring it back to council for a motion to approve the consent agenda, less items D and E off of the,
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So we'll go ahead and do item D and E first on the regular agenda. And I will let Counselor Godus begin.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if Matt or Ryan wanted to come and speak to briefly what those projects are for the public, how they're getting funded, and maybe the time frame.
Good evening, Council. Matt Langhorst, Public Works Director. Item D, I believe, is Wolson Road. We were introduced, so the street tax is funding all of these projects for next year, which is now the street and infrastructure tax after tonight, I believe, for the ordinance change on the name. We are continuing our work on Wolson Road from basically East Meadows intersection all the way back in front of the community center. We'll be removing some concrete that has failed out there, concreting a bus stop in front of the community center, so it's a more safe and stable environment for that bus, and replacing all of the asphalt from East Meadows back around. There's some failing sections. Those will be completely removed and replaced. Other sections will just be a mill and overlay where it's actually still in pretty decent condition. So that project is out to bid, has been returned, was slightly over budget. We kind of anticipated that. But we have other projects coming up. We'll control the scope of those to make sure we have enough money within the street and infrastructure tax. And the E item is Coach Miller Drive design. This is actually funny because whenever I did a conversation about these, one of my this tax, one of the first photos was Coach Miller with the high schoolers walking down the road because they don't have a sidewalk. So what we would like to do is get ahead of that project a little bit. We are going to we are hiring SEH as long as you guys are okay with it. They're going to do a full survey of the project. We are working with the school district. We've actually already met them out there and had a conversation. But basically it is a complete removal of Coach Miller Drive all the way up to basically where it turns to 14th Street and turns into Pitkin. There'll be a new water line loop that goes all the way around because currently our loop goes through the school's property. It's not super convenient to access, and we need a secondary loop because it doesn't feed real well from both sides. It's on our master plan, actually. We'll be removing it, the road, adding curb and gutter, adding some storm sewer in, adding a electric line conduit on the outside, adding a water line, potentially shooting over a sewer and a water line to the concession stand area at the high school bleachers. So maybe they could build a bathroom out there, but we'll accommodate for that. And then putting handicap ramps in so that kids can walk, use the staircase that is adjacent to the Rio Grande Trail and go down. And there's also conversation about potentially working with RAFTA. They don't know it yet, on maybe a secondary handicap ramp so we could access the Rio Grande Trail in that location. So major overhaul. We're going to see if we can figure out how to fund that this year. We've got some grant ideas. It might not work time wise because obviously it has to be done when the school is closed. So once again, street and infrastructure tax will be paying for that item.
Excellent. Any questions from council?
It sounds like the school and Raft is going to be paying a big chunk of that Coach Miller Drive project.
Huge chunk
Cool. Thank you.
or none.
I think there's some, is there some sarcasm at the speaker podium?
No.
No. Okay. Okay, excellent. Any other questions? Counselor Schechter, hold on one second. Since this is on the regular agenda, we'll also ask for public comment. So I'll open it up to public comment. Anybody here would like to make a comment about these two items? Because I think we'll probably have a motion with both. And anyone online would like to discuss these two street and infrastructure funded projects that we are fortunate to have the funding for. Okay, we'll close that, bring it back and look for a motion for item D and E. Counselor Godus.
If it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion for both, but I'll move both forward.
Mhm. And a second. Counselor Zelinski.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item D and E that were previously on our consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay,
Could I ask council a quick question before you move on? We have 3 more large projects that we have out to bid or soon to be out to bid. Would you prefer them not to be on the consent agenda?
yeah, I think
Fair enough.
for a little while, I think that it would be great to just hear about it because I think it's kind of a shout out and a celebration of the things we're able to get done.
Perfect. We will do that from here on out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, now we're gonna just jump right into the actions and or presentations. These are our regular agenda items and we'll start with item number 11, youth tobacco use. I don't know who's presenting.
I can introduce this real quick while we're getting started. We invited Roaring Fork School District to come and give us a quick update on what they're finding in youth tobacco use. We have supported their cause with our tobacco tax fund. So they're just here to give a quick update.
While we're queuing this up, let me just introduce myself. My name is Peter Mueller. I work for Pitkin and Garfield Counties Public Health. I'm the Public Health Promotion Administrator. And I also want to introduce Paul Freeman, who you know is the Glenwood Springs High School Principal, as well as Sarah Brainerd, who is the Deputy Director of Public Health for Garfield County. So one of the things as we kind of queue this up, the reason we're here is that we continue to work on tobacco prevention. Oh, thank you. We continue to work on tobacco prevention and education. One of the foremost things we all know is that 9 out of 10 smokers begin that arduous and lethal addiction, if you will, in grade school before the age of 18. So I wanted to start out as we're kind of finding our way into the technology, just for you to think about for a second to yourself, when was the first time you, if you did, smoked a cigarette? So if you could just kind of conjure up that history of your own experience when you first smoked a cigarette.
Do you want us to share that?
I don't want you to. It happens.
It might be a big share up here tonight. It would like lots of stories from college.
No.
Okay, okay.
So what I'd like you guys to do.
Sorry, yeah. Now you've
What I'd
done-
like you to do is just turn to your partner and just tell
Yeah.
them when you first smoked a cigarette. So the two of you, Weimer and Russo, and Zelinski and Goetz, you guys talk
Yeah.
amongst yourselves.
I do want to pause and just, we want to also make sure you acknowledge that a fellow colleague also joined you with Carrie Gotis.
Oh, Harry.
Yeah, she's part of the crew. So,
She is, she's
Okay,
our
great.
public health specialist, and it's great to have her here. She snuck it. So I will, are you okay, Ryan, continuing to find this?
Yeah, that's fine.
So the story I'll tell is that when I was 5 years old, probably half a century ago, my parents had a crystal vase with a little silver top, and it was filled with cigarettes. And that was pretty typical of all households in America. And I think it took us literally decades until the early 70s, until the Surgeon General said, this is dangerous. In fact, it's lethal, the habit of smoking cigarettes. And we have experienced over the last, probably right up until 2019, which is a little footnote in my slideshow. In 2019, we turned the corner in a bad direction. We went from a declining use of tobacco to an increasing use of tobacco. And the big vehicle for that change was vaping, electronic cigarettes. And so what I wanted to, in my slideshow, is to bring attention to the fact that in 2019, this city council took many very strong and I think bold steps to curtail the access of tobacco in the city of Glenwood Springs. And so what I wanted to do initially was just to ask who was in that room in 2019 that participated in that decision.
Just Jonathan at this point. Yeah. Yeah. But I do have stories from it being one of the most contentious and scary for the city councilors. So you're right. It was a very heavy and difficult, but absolutely worthwhile decision.
Yes. And so Jonathan, can I put you on the spot and give you a chance to kind of say what was going on at that time?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. You got to push it. Mhm.
Yeah, I think we were hearing, all of council was hearing stories about middle schoolers. I was hearing it from my middle schooler, but I was hearing from, all of us were hearing about kids not being able to go into bathrooms because they were just vaping areas. And, I think I talked to Joel Hathaway, the middle school principal, about like, why can't you just put a teacher in there, right? Because it just makes all the sense in the world. And he's like, well, I barely have enough teachers to put in the classroom, Jonathan.
Mhm.
And so I think, certainly I had some conversations with a public health specialist in my home who said, no, this is a huge issue. And we had kids count data that showed that Colorado was twice the national average and the mountain communities were twice the state average. So we were 4 times the national average in the mountain communities. And I think that's what spurred the council at the time to start to look. And so we invited tobacco-free kids representatives to come in and talk to us about some options. And they lined out 4 options and we're like, yep,
Mhm.
all of those. And it was unanimous. I don't think it was a heavy lift, but there was not one person on council, I think, that felt that protecting our kids wasn't worth it. We had pediatricians, we had school officials, public health officials. The whole community really showed up and really gave us, I think, the backing and the understanding to make those decisions.
So thank you for sharing that. As we continue, do you want to just, while they're trying to work on that, you're welcome to talk, or he can give an overview on the tobacco tax?
Yeah.
Kind of
Let
keep
me
this
just-
moving forward?
I'll just kind of highlight
Okay.
what was done in 2019. The intention was to restrict youth access to tobacco. The way to do that was to ban flavors to increase the cost,
Mhm.
to have local compliance of retailers so that the town was empowered to make sure that the retailers were following a bunch of basic rules. You had to announce that tobacco was dangerous to your health. You had to announce that only people over 21 and over could access tobacco. And then in particular, the flavor ban and the additional cost had a significant impact on the sale of tobacco. Now you're still generating revenue. And when I met with Steve Boyd and Jonathan, they mentioned that the revenue had gone down about 30%. And so I think it's just important for us to take a look at more specifically how that impacted and had a relationship to what was going on in the schools. So that's what we're going to keep. I'll keep going, keep us going on that track.
Sorry, wait for it to scan. It scans and actions.
So marching on in the Healthy Kids Colorado survey is a really critical event for schools, for Mr. Freeman, for all schools to understand what's going on with students, their mental health, their physical health, their habits, and their use of substances. So in particular, smoked in the last 30 days. That number is a smaller number, but 7.1, it dropped to 5.2. That's a drop of 27% over the last 4 years between 2019 and 2023. Easy to get e-cigarettes dropped from 69%, said that was an easy thing to gain access to 53%, a drop of 23%. And the most important one from my perspective is vaped in the last 30 days. That's the bulk of our current problem right now is with vaping. Went from almost 1 in 3 students, 28.4%, down to 12.4% in 2023, a drop of 56%. And then likewise, the tried to quit, and I think this is an important understanding for our community, is that students have often gotten entangled with tobacco and they are interested in quitting. So in 2019, it was nearly 60%, and in 2023, it's 58%. So just a remarkable kind of interest in moving away from cigarettes. The one challenge that I think remains for towns, for municipalities, for counties, is that when students at Glenwood Springs High School are polled, 78% still say they are not turned away from buying tobacco in retail establishments. And so there are still ways in which students are unfettered in their access to tobacco. And that's a troubling statistic that we, continue to wrestle with in terms of what is your municipal laws and expectations for the police department, for schools, for public health. How do we continue to discourage tobacco use and make access harder and harder for youth? So I want to stop there because I feel like it's so important to hear from Paul about his experience with tobacco in the schools.
Mhm.
So Paul, thanks for coming.
This is slide 7, by the way.
Yes.
Peter and I are teachers, so we're very much used to our carefully prepared PowerPoint presentations not working. I was here in 2019. It was a very tense meeting. I didn't realize that that was not the ordinary way in which business was conducted, and I thought I never want to do the work that these people are doing. That's a long-winded way of saying thank you for the courage of that decision. I realized as I was thinking back to 2019 how much more of my time and my colleague administrators' time was taken up by policing vaping. It was a disproportionate amount of the disciplinary incidents. There are 1,027 students at Glenwood Springs High School. At their age, it's a wonderful thing. They want to experiment with everything that the world has to offer. And looking forward to how they might feel when they're an unbelievable age, I don't know, say 30, is not within their competence. They are highly susceptible. And the drop in the usage has made my life much easier, although bathroom vape patrol is still a thing. I was thinking of making a sign, because I stand outside bathrooms a lot at break times. Administrators here to make your bathroom experience more pleasant. We're still doing way more of that than we would like to, but the action that you took on that fateful evening in 2019 has had a major impact, and it has saved lungs and lives of that. You can be confident. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is part of a larger effort in the Roaring Fork Valley. What is next is that I have been working with the towns of Parachute and Silt, both of which have given me direction to work with the town managers to draft tobacco retail license ordinances. I'm also scheduled to go in front of the Rifle Town Council later this spring. And my hope is that if all communities in the Roaring Fork and lower or middle Colorado valleys draft and adopt a tobacco retail license ordinance, really further ensuring that youth don't have that underage access to tobacco, that then the county, Garfield County, will follow suit with a tobacco retail license ordinance. Again, these are not the fail-safe, end all of public health for youth, but I think it's an important step. And as Paul said, I applaud the courage that this town council made 5 years ago.
Might be a little late, but.
Well, this is a picture of, those are pictures of students from Basalt High School at the, I believe that's the, I think that's the, is it the Callaway Center up at CMC? And I think the point here is that, as Paul mentioned, youth are incredibly high-spirited, and they're also adventurous, and they are looking for how to live their lives. And all we're trying to do is to delay the choice that they might make around tobacco until their bodies, their minds are fully developed so they can make that choice as they see fit. Tobacco in this day and age is geared with these anesthetizing agents that allow for the buzz of nicotine to be harmless, or at least it feels that way for your lungs. And yet, as we know, it's highly addictive, and just in a very short time, we're seeing so many youth, even though the percentages have dropped significantly. If you look at 12%, that's still over 120 students who are vaping in the last 30 days. So Paul's work is still out in front of him. And again, we're just calling attention to the courageous move you made 5 years ago. The other thing that we continue to push on is Second Chance, which is a state-run non-punitive response to people who get into trouble with tobacco. You do not have a minor in possession law, and we applaud that in terms of the fact that when you make mistakes as a youth, we're not trying to get you in trouble. We're trying to show you a better way of living and a better set of choices. So the Second Chance, the engaging youth. And I think the other thing to do is that whether it's Youth Zone, Access After School, the Buddy Program, all of these kind of youth-serving nonprofit organizations really do their part in supporting healthy youth. And so we continue to support their good work in our communities. Lastly, I'm working with schools to produce an anti-vaping and student resilience video, which is all from students, by students, a bilingual video that I will use to help spread that message that you don't have to vape to belong. Let's see, I've really lost track of this. The one thing I've got in here is kind of a spreadsheet of who's developed the tobacco retail license ordinance and where the price increases are, where the flavor bans are, and where they're not. And as I mentioned, working with Parachute, Rifle, Silt, and Newcastle to bring them along in the same vein of Glenwood Springs. Once that's ideally complete, I'll move on to the case of Garfield County. And that is, I'm starting to run out of material, which is good. The other thing I wanted to mention in this presentation is just the fact that the number one factor in reducing adolescent smoking is having and turning to a trusted adult. We're never trying to supplant the autonomy, the power, the influence of the family. The family is first and foremost the way in which our children learn how to live. And that will continue to be the most important way in which we model healthy behavior and support students and young people for having a choice of what they want their lives to be. So along that line, the parent, the teacher, the coach, the mentor, the youth mentor, an older friend, those are all the most important ways that we affect the lives and well-being of students. I have a slide in there about breaking the habit, which is just another reference to the Colorado Quit Line, which is an awesome resource. And then I follow up with that next step slides where I reiterate the interest in second chance for schools. I talk about the Quit Line for any Colorado citizen to get the support they need to quit tobacco dependence. And then lastly, I kind of leave that question on the table of how do we further manage the restriction of tobacco sales in retail outlets. It's still higher than we want it to be. And it's a question that I'd love to have, the town council, the police department, think about how we could do a better job restricting access to, for underage sales of tobacco. So I know that there we go. That's it.
Appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank you.
I am going to open it up to some questions just to confirm that council doesn't have any additional questions. Okay, I'll open it to public comment. Anybody here this evening in person with any questions or comments? Oh, Lori Chase, come on up. You're welcome to come on up to the podium. 3 minutes.
You guys are. Lori Chase, 705 Cowden Drive. I started smoking when I was 13 because I wanted to go against everything that my parents wanted me to do. My dad smoked. He sat me down one time and he said, I want you to smoke this cigar in front of me. I did. I inhaled every time. I was so proud of myself. The second most proud time around smoking was when I turned 40, I quit. And that was the hardest thing. And I really think that if kids knew that and what it could do to their body, but it wasn't going to affect me because I could still take a really deep inhale and go, see, look, it's not doing anything to me because I was really rebellious. So I think the idea of having trusted adults, I also think, Youth Zone, all of those, including the Arts Council with healthy alternatives for kids. That is all.
Thanks, Lori.
Thanks.
We appreciate it. Thank you for that comment. Anyone online this evening that would like to take this opportunity. Okay, I'll close public comment, bring it back to council. Just as a thank you so much for this presentation. Thank you all for what you do for the communities and for our kids. And also a shout out to Counselor Godus, who I just saw your light come on. Thanks for taking one for the team in 2019 and helping our kids, but we'll let you wrap up.
Yeah, I just think the regionalism, I think one of the things that was missing is that when we did this in 2019, Basalt had just done it, and so had Aspen, and Carbondale was about to. And knowing that that was happening throughout the valley, I kept saying we didn't want to be the Amsterdam of the valley, where it's Glenwood's the place where all the kids in the valley go. We kind of have that, you alluded to the county. We have that a little bit at Thunder River and Catherine Store in the valley. And so we're not going to quite be able to get over that until the county comes along. But I think you're doing it exactly right. I think going to these other town councils and getting those communities to do the two biggest things, raise the price and ban the vaping flavors, is going to create that regional approach. And the biggest thing I think that gives me a lot of hope is the city of Denver just in December did those two things. And so when the largest municipality in the state does that, it's going to give a lot of other people some backbone. So I applaud your efforts. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you, Mr. Friedman, and Public Health as well.
Thank you all. Thanks for coming this evening.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to item number 12. This is our ordinance 2025-05, budget amendment number 2.
Good evening, council. Steve Boyd, city manager. This is an ordinance to appropriate $1 million into our general fund to be able to use to oppose anything that the mine continues to do to expand here in town. So happy to take any questions.
I think this is fantastic, and I think this is exactly why we have had a placeholder on that $1 million, because we will aggressively and actively fight against this for the good of our whole entire region and our community. Oh, Counselor Curtis has a comment.
Yeah, so I don't know, Carl, if you saw it. I saw it today, the citizens, did anybody else see this, that they put before the state a doubling, I believe, of their permitted acres?
Yeah, we were going to talk about that underneath my report.
Yep.
Or I can
So-
talk about it now. I
Yep.
was just going to say, we are going to prep a letter for the mayor's signature because of the timing on all of that coming together. We don't have it done tonight. It needs to go out tomorrow. So hopefully council is comfortable with us providing probably a shorter version of the letter than Roger drafted, but the same sentiment on opposing that and wanting it to go to a public hearing rather than a technical amendment for that, effectively a doubling another 18.5 acres. So.
Excellent. So I think before I take it to the next step, we'll just double check. No one has any questions about this. Any comments? Anybody from the public? You have a question?
Go too deep.
Okay,
For the
go ahead.
For the public's sake, Steve, would you explain where that $1 million is or will be?
Yeah, so we have about $10 million in our general fund that is not allocated towards a particular purpose. We carry one of those $10 million in a reserve, just kind of informally to oppose the mine. What we're doing here is leaving that reserve where it is and appropriating $1 million that are just in our general reserve.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that clarity, Counselor Schachter. Any questions from the public this evening? Anyone online with a question about this $1 million appropriation to fight RMI expansion and any additional litigation that comes forward? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to council for a motion. Counselor Finn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 12, ordinance 2025-05, budget amendment number 2. I would move that we approve this ordinance.
Counselor Zelinski. I second. Okay. Any comments? I'll call the question.
It passes 7-0. It's unanimous.
And
Thank you,
it-
council.
Yeah, I think that's a reflection of our fortitude and our resiliency to fight this. This is nonpartisan issue for our community. This continues to be an issue, and I look forward to putting it to rest. We'll move forward on to planning. This is 13, item 13, planning item 21-24, Roaring Fork Transportation Authority 1041 review.
Good evening, council. I'm just going to pull up my presentation. Here we go. Okay, so this is, and my name is Watkins. I'm a planner for the city. This item tonight is a review for RAFTA for a review for guidelines and regulations for matters of state interest. And that's kind of a mouthful. So tonight I'm going to be referring to this item as RAFTA's 1041 review. And this is for a new transit station that's at 2302 Wolfson Road. And I'm going to show you on a site plan where this is, and we're going to talk about what's around it here in a second. But I wanted to first discuss that this is part of a larger project. Also included with this general project is a new maintenance building and a new large administration building. Those were approved by Planning and Zoning Commission last week, January 28th, with a location and extent review. So what's before you tonight is a 1041 review for the transit center. And as we'll discuss here later, it applies to the essential elements of the transit center. So some of the details, like the landscaping and the parking lot layout and stuff, I'm not planning to get into detail with you all unless you would like to, because those were approved last week at Planning and Zoning Commission. So before we get started, just a little bit of history and what's around here. As I mentioned last week, P&Z approved the location and extent review, and they recommended approval of this 1041 review for you all. This is near what was formerly the Municipal Operations Center before RAFTA took over ownership of it. And so RAFTA has some new and some very new buildings up there, including their maintenance facility, which is a bus barn. That's a large building there, a fuel and wash, and a newer fuel and wash. They have a little bit of office space. And of course, there's an existing kind of small park and ride in this location. Here's a picture first of the new administration building that was approved by P&Z. And then below you can see a mock-up of what the new transit center will look like. So this is a significant expansion and upgrade to what's there now. So if you can see this map here, the number 3 is where we're talking about tonight primarily. That's where the existing transit center is and where the new development will happen. But just so you're aware, the number 1 is where the maintenance building will be, and 2 is where the administration building will be. And so this is another plan to kind of orient you on some of the other things that are there. You see kind of sketched out the new bus barn and some of the existing maintenance facility and fuel and wash. And some photos of where this is on Wolfson Road, as I'm sure you all are aware. And here we're looking at what the new transit center will actually look like in plan view. So there are 9 bus bays, and so that's a significant upgrade from what's there now. You can see the building, and there's a number of other accessory things that are there, bike racks, a bike barn, plans for a we-cycle station, some landscaping, and some expanded parking. And we should talk also about what the rules are for this project, because this is actually a kind of a complex project. It has obviously multiple buildings and multiple aspects to it, and there are multiple sets of regulations that apply here. Mainly what you're charged with tonight is reviewing whether this project meets what's in section 070080, which is our guidelines and regulations for matters of state interest. There are 19 main criteria of approval, which we're going to go through here, and then 3 additional ones that are specific to key facilities like this one is. And just so you guys know, the Glenwood Meadows Zoning and Development Plan is a set of regulations that apply just to Glenwood Meadows area, of which this transit center is a part. So when the P&Z looked at things like parking and landscaping, they were looking mostly at this document as well as a little bit of code. And so I want to be clear again that staff report talks about it, but when we talk about essential elements of the transit center, we're talking about improvements that substantially impact the 1041 criteria of approval. So those 19+3 criteria that we're going to look at. The non-essential elements are what I've alluded to a few times, design elements like landscaping that don't impact the areas or the activities of state interest. So one of the big topics in this project, one of the things that we've had our eye on is the Midland and Wolfson intersection. This is the west intersection of Midland and Wolfson. And their traffic report identifies that it will need some improvements. The transit center will contribute 1.68% increase in traffic volume. So that's not a huge increase in traffic. But we do know that that intersection does need some work to function well. And our engineering department has flagged, actually had previously flagged that a roundabout is the preferred option here. So we're going into that assumption with that as the assumption. And we will have a condition of approval that you've seen that asks for RAPTA to contribute monetarily to that roundabout and the amount equal to their traffic increase, so that 1.68%. This is the beginning of many slides I have for you with a lot of words on them. So I don't plan to read all of them to you unless you'd like, but I do want to make clear that these 19+3 criteria are what you're using to approve or disapprove or continue this application. Particular importance is the number 5 here. Project will not have significant adverse effect on the capability of local governments affected by the project to provide local infrastructure and services or exceed the capacity of service delivery systems. We have gotten there to a point with our conditions of approval that we're confident that this project will meet this criteria here. So you're scrolling through the criteria. Number 19, I'll also note the project shall emphasize the most efficient use of water, including the recycling, reuse, and conservation of water. There's some discussion in the staff report about the irrigation line that'll go under Wolfson Road. We think we do have an acceptable solution to that so that it doesn't result in any adverse effects to Wolfson Road. And here are the 3 criteria specific to key facilities, of which this is one. Key facilities include rapid or mass transit terminals. We do think that this project meets many of the goals of our comp plan, including to promote transit-oriented development, to expand local transit and enhance regional transit to, from, and through Glenwood Springs. It supports the expansion of green transportation options. It supports the goal of plan for transit stations located in all mixed-use neighborhoods by incorporating principles of smart growth, new urbanism, and green building. And it helps to concentrate growth in Glenwood Springs and locations that can be served by high-frequency transit. Referral comments, we have a lot of standard comments. Engineering is obviously concerned about that intersection in the roundabout, which is why you see a condition of approval in your packet. Public Works has a lot of comments that will be incorporated in the final plans review or in building permit. And Fire Department had a couple of comments. They wanted to add a fire hydrant, which is reflected in a condition of approval, and to have a kind of a campus style fire alarm for all of their buildings out there. I've not received any public comments so far for this project. So the staff recommendation is to approve the 1041 review with the findings and conditions in the report. In the findings, there will be 22 of them to reflect the 22 criteria of approval. Again, I won't read these to you, but I am going to scroll through them. And we have, I think, 11 conditions of approval, which we can talk about in detail if you would like. I'm just going to scroll through them right now. A picture, because I just gave you a lot of words. And that's all I have for you guys. So I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Counselor Sims.
What year was the baseline for the percentage increase in traffic?
It uses 2025 as the baseline.
Where 2025 is right now, so that's projected on this year's current traffic.
That's right.
Okay. So how do we know what the percentage increase is from a year that we're a month and a half into, or a month and a few days?
Well, so we have what the traffic is in 2025, and to get into a little more detail, I think that includes a little bit of estimation for some of the rafted buildings that were just CO'd just recently.
Yeah.
So those probably haven't been measured with traffic counts. But we know what the traffic volume is for 2025. And so that 1.68% represents what the increase will be due to this project compared to where we are now.
Seems light, considering we're looking at,
So just to clarify, just for the transit center.
Yeah.
Not for the other buildings.
Okay.
So that's why the number is 1.68.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay, thanks.
Yep. Counselor Dunn.
Okay, thank you. So the roundabout, seems to be the biggest question to me. And the question I have is if let's say RAFTA were to pack up tomorrow and say, we're not doing this at all, would we ever build a roundabout there?
That's a great question. I might pull Ryan Gordon up to answer that.
And second part, if we do, how far out would it be? When would we need that roundabout?
I think they're calling your name, Ryan.
Good evening, Council. Ryan Gordon, City Engineer. Yeah, so the question was the roundabout, yes or no? So just to clarify, you're asking if RAFTA disappeared and they were no longer building, would we need a roundabout there or not? So we've had several projections, traffic projections over the years, traffic studies, and each one has identified something to be improved at this intersection. And that has always been consistently a roundabout for a variety of reasons. So the answer is if RAFTA disappeared and nothing else moved back in there, we would still need a roundabout, but it would be many years in the future. One of the things that is contributing to the need is the development of this part of the part of this area in the universe, including BLD up the street. But certainly this intersection is quickly becoming to the end of its useful life, so to speak. And traffic projections is based on level of service. A is the best, F is the worst. I don't know exactly where it is now, but we are getting closer to where we need to do something at the intersection. There are long wait times if you're there trying to turn left across traffic, particularly at the peak times. So something needs to be done at this point.
So at this point, this roundabout is not in our immediate future, budget-wise.
Budget-wise, we have it budgeted for this year to design. And then as we're projecting out, we do have money set aside in 26 to potentially build this, but we don't have all the monies that we need for this project yet.
Okay, and just a second question came up. The 1.68% was just for the transit center. That's just the 9 buses and the parking lots associated with it. Do we have a traffic count on what else RAFTA is proposing? The office building, the maintenance facility?
I'm going to do that thing I used to do to you at the planning commission
What was that?
and say that's outside the scope of your authority and discussion for this evening.
Hard to make a decision if you don't have all the answers to.
Well, but you're not making a decision on those things. You're just making a decision on the transit center.
He's saying if we were to be approving like the Meadows, then you could individually pluck out one thing here and talk about it, but big picture, the application is specific to this parcel.
I understand the concept.
I know.
I'm not saying that.
But
And I guess where I was going is from I'm getting the sense that it might go to an exaction. This is the 1.68 is what underneath that we have authority to ask for. That's not to say that we're probably not on the political side going to go and have a discussion about our partnership with RAFTA as far as the other impacts to this intersection.
So the
But-
1.68 is strictly for the transit center, not even for the office, not even for the headquarters.
No, because the 1041 regulations, you just need to look at the specific project and the impacts of that project, which is all you're looking at.
Which is the
tonight,
transit center.
Which is the transit center, which is the 1.68.
Got it.
I think I would like the applicant to maybe unpack a little bit of the traffic study, when it was done, how it was calculated. I mean, I think there's enough questions that have simmered up here that would be helpful. Counselor Godus.
Am I right in seeing that by zoning in that area, it's a use by right of 40 feet, and this is going to be 48.8? Is that correct?
You're referring to the height of the administration building?
Yes.
I'm going to stop you again. Not part of the conversation tonight.
Yeah.
Just there for informational purposes. That was reviewed underneath location and extent because they're another government entity. And so while the planning commission can review and comment and could have said no, or could have said yes, like they did with 8, here's some things to look at. Just like us, when they're building in other jurisdictions, they can go back to their board and say, we still want to do what we want to do. And go ahead and move forward on it. So, but it's not within the scope of your review tonight, only the transit center.
So I would make a request potentially so that Mark and I can keep up apparently. From staff, if we can't make a decision on it, don't give us the information. I don't even want to know the larger project if I have no, I mean, don't give me the building height can exceed this if I can't even weigh in on it, just personally. It doesn't serve me to know something that I can't make a decision on. That being said, could you talk to me about, there's 106 spaces. So it looks like from the drawing that the current parking lot is going to be this big transit center and the islands and all that jazz. And then a new parking lot is going to go like to the northeast of that and down a little bit. Is that correct?
Yeah, the location is northeast, north, a little bit on the west side as well.
Okay.
And so it's an expansion of about 22 spaces.
So then you'll net gain will be 22 spaces.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm not out there in the mornings a whole lot. Does that, maybe this question for Raftet, does it currently get filled up as it is? No. Okay.
Yeah, I would say it's well used, but I haven't personally seen it full.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like I see a lot of people, I know a lot of people personally that use it for, bus tank that park there for a couple days, and I don't know if they're supposed to or not, but they do. So if it's not maxed out, then I'm glad we're getting 22 spaces anyway. So that's my question. Thanks.
So I'm going to go round 3 and make sure that Carl doesn't jack me. I'm going to go item number 1 and just ask about, and this may be a question again for the applicant, but the lighting that is currently slated. I know that lighting has historically been an issue on adjacent parcels, not that we're discussing this evening or any future that we would be discussing, but specific to this parcel, the lighting, I'd like to know what attempts have been implemented in the design to reduce the lumens and, or even within the design scope, make it so that no light projects across the hillside, which would impact the health and welfare of our West Glenwood constituents and community members.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
So their lighting plan for all aspects of this project was very close to meeting our requirements. There were just a few readings in their photometric plan that are a little bit higher than they're supposed to be. And the P&Z approved a condition of approval that they fix those. So that has been fixed. Also mentioned that the height was addressed in a condition of approval that the P&Z approved also.
So I appreciate that. But then I'm going to go on to item number 8, which is visual changes to the landscape. And this combination of lighting and visual changes, this is a very distinctly unique parcel, and that so much of our residential area on the West Glenwood side looks directly south to this. And so I'm curious what the applicant incorporated into the design, both the colors of the exterior to blend with the environment, and the lighting. Once again, you know, there is a design element that can be incorporated that will make it right now so that lighting is less impactful to those on the northern side of the hill.
Mm-hmm. So all the lighting that they're incorporating is downward projecting. It's fully shielded. It's within the maximum lighting that we maximum intensity that we allow. We've also asked through conditions of approval that were approved that the light poles not be too high. We have a maximum for that because that's something that can affect how light can travel as well.
Absolutely.
It's a very high pole.
Okay.
So as far as what our code requires, they are going to meet that with the lighting. And then you brought up the colors of the building. Those are all going to be earth toned out there.
Okay.
So you're going to see a lot of dark reds, some browns, some kind of grays.
Okay. I'll go to Councilor Schechter.
Thank you. May we ask about the roundabout, Counselor?
Yeah,
As a condition to this approval?
Yeah, as it relates to the impacts that it has on.
So
or this
if I
project has in it.
I understand there's an agreement that there will be some cost sharing in the future roundabout. Is that one of the conditions of approval?
One of the conditions of approval is, yes, that they contribute an amount equal to that traffic volume increase for the transit center.
Okay, so that kind of concerns me. Again, I'll raise the question that my peers have about that traffic study in 1.6. I'm not a traffic expert, but you're increasing the number of parking spaces by about 25%. You're increasing bus spaces by 50%, I believe, something like that. How do we get to a 1.6? How do we get from those increases plus an increase in likely trailhead traffic besides parking? How do we get down to 1.6 from those numbers? And I'm concerned if that's the criteria for the cost sharing, which I wonder if it should not be a higher amount. Those are my questions at this point.
Sure.
City Manager Steve Boyd, would you like to opine?
Sure, I'm happy to weigh in on that. So I don't know the specifics of how that 1.68 comes together. The conversations that we've had are, we have a very wide estimate on this roundabout, and we've hired SGM to kind of help us start to understand it. It's a big range. So what they have said is between $4 and $8 million. So we took the middle part of that, $6 million, assuming that's what this thing costs, multiplied that by the 1.68 that is in the traffic report, and that's how we get to their contribution is about $100,000. Now, we have not budgeted for or passed this project yet. I mean, we're going to have to look at this when we know the numbers and we're smarter about what's happening with all the other projects that we've got in the world. And generally speaking, if somebody is going to have, some, impact on a project like this, we will go to them. There's a shopping center across the street, for example, and talk about, whether or not it makes sense to cost share, that kind of thing. So I think there's still a conversation ahead of us.
So are you saying, even though we're using 1.6, the amount is open-ended? And is there any way to then for us to approve this without knowing that actual condition?
Yeah, we don't know what the roundabout is going to cost. So, I mean, we're approving this to push the project through. I think we need to have a conversation when we get there about how much this roundabout is going to cost, when we can get it built, and how we're going to pay for it.
So is there a way to remove that 1.6% as the ratio, as opposed to looking at other criteria or other traffic factors, weight factors, and the final costs? It just seems extremely low.
Well, I don't think it's low for the transit center. I think what is stuck for all of us, and I'm in the same place, don't get me wrong, about the rest of the project, but we don't have the ability to exact that as a condition of approval underneath your regulations. The 1.68 does, I think, accurately reflect a percentage of increase in that roundabout. What I will tell you on the price of that roundabout, the reason those numbers I think are that high, and Matt or Ryan can probably will say it better than I will. Part of that is that they are designing underneath the understanding of what's going to be going through it on a regular basis with the buses, right? So what that roundabout design criteria look like is different than the sides, the thickness, the cross section that gets used, both for the repairs on Wolshin next to the transit center, as well as what the design would be. So that number, that swing of 4 to 8 is reflective of those design criteria.
Thank you. I appreciate. Counselor Sector, was that all your questions?
At this point, yes.
Okay. Counselor Dem.
Thank you. Okay, two more things. And this is rather ignorant, but I want to know. In the criteria number 3, it said financially feasible. Does that pertain to the applicant only or everybody involved?
That does pertain to the applicant, so
Strictly applicant.
their ability to do the project.
Okay, great. And the other question is a 1041 of what we're looking at right now, the review of a 1041. If a 1041 is not approved, what does that mean to the applicant?
That means that the project would not happen.
No, it's not like a location and extent where it's automatically moving.
It's not, which is part of why the tie to the criteria specifically and the rational relationship and defending that decision all goes into it differently than location and extent.
That's what I
and
recollect. I
probably,
just want to make
honestly,
sure.
Because there is so much authority in 1041, it is generally, pretty middle of the road or narrowly construed by the courts as to that power, because it is pretty powerful for you to be able to say no to another entity, another governmental entity.
Right,
Primarily, 1041 focuses on mitigation of impacts
right.
and is not that binary, yes, no, you can't do the project. It is more focused on what are the impacts of the project and are you appropriately and rationally mitigating those with the conditions of approval?
Got it. Thank you.
Counselor Zelinski.
So this is a question for you as well. Procedurally, can we anticipate doing the same review for the next other phases of this project?
If they fall into those areas of state interest, transit facilities being one of them. You'll remember you did a 1041 on the utility extent, the upgrade of
Right.
the power line. It will depend on what it is and whether it falls into that category or not.
Okay.
Any additional questions for staff? Okay. Would we like to get applicants up here for any questions? Yeah. Presentation, questions, come on up.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Ben Ludlow with Roaring Fork Transportation Authority. I did not bring my usual helpers tonight because they're at a basketball game. Instead, I brought with me CEO Kurt Ragersog, our COO David Peasantchek. I have on the line with me our architect Alex Jock from SEH, along with Louis Wilshire from DHM, who's our landscape architect. If you have any questions for me, I can attempt to answer those or they can help us out.
Okay, do we have any questions for the applicant or the entity? The governmental entity? I don't know that you're actually applying for anything here.
Right. Yeah, and again, I'm not going to provide a presentation. I think Watkins really gave you
Yeah.
an excellent overview of why we're here.
Mhm.
I had one ready, but it's just going to repeat the same thing.
Okay, great. Yeah. Any questions? Okay. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, Counselor Dunn.
Okay, Carl's gonna probably shut me down anyway. So we're talking about the transit center right now. And Counselor Zelinski asked very nicely, when are we gonna see the other ones?
Mhm.
The other ones and do not require 1041. They were approved as location extent in the planning and zoning meeting last week.
What, and why is this one different?
Yeah. The headquarters doesn't account for a
No.
transportation facility?
No, it does not. It does not meet the definition of a transit
That's
facility.
why, there it is. So we
Yeah,
will
there-
not see it.
You will not see it. That's, I'm sorry. I guess I should have been more specific
Yeah, I
about that.
didn't get that
The
at all.
planning.
I'm like,
Oh.
when is it coming?
Yeah.
I said other, I was saying there's like 6 or 7 future, I mean, there's a.
No more.
There's no more.
Sorry, I thought there were a couple more phases that,
There may-
charging state,
Well, we
all
may-
all that stuff.
There may be additional charging within our existing.
Okay,
facility,
sorry.
but
That's what I was saying.
Got
We've
it.
been
So-
talking about a number of other like components of the. So from a location and extent standpoint, you'll recall from our work session on location and extent, it only goes to the planning commission.
Correct.
Mhm.
It doesn't come to you. So you will not see those other pieces, which is part of why I think staff included, so you'd have a flavor of what was going on out there.
So just to sum it up, the roundabout discussion and the 1.68% traffic increase, this is it. This is our night to talk about it.
No.
Yes.
Not how much we're gonna contribute.
No, in terms of.
Yeah.
That-
Okay,
not,
okay.
in terms of the 1041,
Yeah.
this is
This
the
is
night
it.
and the
Yeah, this is-
1.68. In terms of talking about the partnership with RAFTA and things like how we helped at 27th Street, I mean, we have all of Southbridge, 27th. We have a very complex relationship with RAFTA, and I'm sure this will come up in other contexts, but not underneath the 1041 permit.
Okay. Counselor Godus.
This may not be exactly right on, but just out of curiosity. Somebody wants to build a fourplex in this town, we have to have a full council review. Somebody wants to build a 50-foot, $100 million campus, doesn't come to us. It just sits in P and Z.
State statute, matter of statewide concern.
Okay, just,
Maybe
okay.
go to the state on that one and let them know you didn't like that process.
I'm more a comment about our charter.
Yeah. I will also say that we did have a work session on 1041 reviews. And so we did have an overview, which Carl and Steve, thank you so much for that. But I think that this is, for the public, this is an unusual, we don't see these very often. And so it's rather complex. And because it is another quasi judicial or governmental agency, they have certain powers, strengths that kind of supersede our ability to legislate, which is our job. So in this case, we're just a reviewing body. But if one of these, I see 18 criteria, if we didn't have a rationale to support that, we could deny it. But I think we're seeing that there's some concerns over. However, with that, I see a few more lights lit up. Counselor Schechter.
Well, again, I'm perseverating on this. My biggest concern is we're looking at $48 million of expense and it looks like, unless somebody tells me otherwise, we're locking ourselves into a 1.6%.
$108,000.
Yeah. And I guess part of my question, being skeptical of traffic studies over the history here in this valley, is there a way as a condition to look for an alternative view, an alternative study as requirement, or something doesn't seem, I'm sorry, something does not seem right. And I don't know how to get around that in this case, and it's our only shot to get around it. And that's my concern.
I guess my question is, keeping in mind that, so let me, because this is me kind of, as I was processing through this as well. And so you're going to kind of hear me think out loud, and hopefully it'll help you. So we're talking about the 1.68. We have a certain amount of background out of the current facility that is at the site. So we're talking about the incremental increase over what's going on this site as far as the current parking lot. That incremental increase, which is 40 spaces, 20 spaces, 22 spaces of increase over what it is today. So we're talking about increase over 22 and some additional buses compared to what's going on in that Wolfson and Midland intersection every day, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's how it started making more sense, that it's only, somewhere between 1.5% and 2% of total traffic. Because we're really, in my head, we're running quite a few buses already anyway, but it's really only 22 spaces that is changing. As far as those larger impacts of the entire operation of RAFTA, that's a whole different conversation, and feels very different, and the impacts are very different. But they're just not what we have exaction authority for tonight, which is why I keep defining that, is that you may have lots of leverage. You sit on the RAFTA board, you can have that conversation, but in terms of authority to exact mitigation, this is what the traffic reports are telling us is the relationship between the changes in this transit facility, how much is going to impact that intersection.
Thank you.
Carl, thanks for that explanation of that. I think that was really good. I would just add that we're not planning on adding more buses. That's just bus parking layover spaces. We're not doing a route change in our 2025 numbers. Our routes stay the same. So the bus count stays exactly the same as our baseline data. And our study was done in 24. I believe it was 23, 24, one of the two. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in. There's a couple questions, but I'm going to ask one question to Ben first. And that is, this facility is comparable to facilities up and down the valley for RAFTA. Is that,
No, it's actually, a long time ago, when we came up with the idea, we called it Ruby Park North. So we wanted to function and operate like Ruby Park does in Aspen, right? So you have buses that circle around for loading at a center island. The difference with this versus Ruby Park is the parking that's associated there, because at Ruby Park, they don't have any parking. So it's kind of like maybe say the Elgibel Park and Ride with a really nice transit center is how I would look at it.
and would you say that this transit center is for the majority benefit of our community of Glenwood Springs? Or would you say that the benefit of this is for the Roaring Fork Transportation Authority on a whole?
I've been tapped out.
Okay. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor,
Yeah.
members of council. Kurt Ravenschlag, CEO for RAFTA. Hearing the discussion tonight, I think one of the things that's been missing, and it's where you were going with this,
Mhm, thank
Mayor,
you.
is just why are we building
Yeah.
this? What is the purpose of it? As some of you may remember, we conducted a move study. Well, I should say it goes back to Destination 2040, where RAFTA worked up and down the valley, working with our member jurisdictions for improvements that were needed
Mhm.
for each jurisdiction to help with their mobility. It was identified that a transit center was needed in Glenwood Springs. It was really a sort of desert in terms of our ability to provide customer service and amenities to users of RAFTA. Through that study, it was identified that West Glenwood was the right location for us to construct that transit center. One, it was an area where we could accommodate parking for people to transition modes from a car to a bus better than we could in the downtown setting. It's an area where we could expand parking as needed over time. But the idea behind it is for us to be able to capture traffic off of I-70 before it drives through Glenwood to the 27th Street station, which is where it currently happens today. So our goal with this facility is to remove that traffic off of Grand Avenue that's traveling to 27th Street, capture them in West Glenwood so that they can make that modal change there. Through this process that has been outlined by the city for our application for this project through the 1041 process, we understand that there is a condition that has been placed on this project that represents the 1.68% contribution towards that roundabout. Our mission is mobility. We are trying to move people in this valley as effectively as we can. We want that intersection to work just as much as the Glenwood Springs community wants it to work. Through this process, though, and through this application for approval, there has been a condition. That doesn't mean it's the only opportunity to have a discussion, though, about how RAFTA can help with that intersection in the future.
I just heard an offer, but a discussion at a future date.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And big picture, I heard some clarity on what the transit center's goal is. So thank you. Counselor Gotis.
Thanks. Sumner, perseverate, whatever.
Perseverate?
Perseverate, yeah. I think that the hard thing for me is that 1.6 is it, if none of this was going in, none of this, I'm putting big parentheses around it to stay on the right side, because the admin building is going to increase traffic volume 5.9%. We have no control over that. And so if none of this were to happen, would we need a roundabout at all, period? I think that's a question. The other question is the 22 spaces the straw that breaks the camel's back? Would we like a roundabout? Would it function well? And is this the last kind of straw? Knowing that we're going to have 300 more units getting their CO probably this year, knowing that there's still some development opportunities along Wolfson Road, putting that all on the back, I think, of RAFTA is probably not fair. No one's talking about that, obviously. So I think that's the hard thing I'm also struggling with, is it's absolutely the larger project is going to contribute to this. I think our relief, honestly, is turning to our RAFTA representative and saying, I think you need, when this conversation comes back and talks about from the RAFTA standpoint of, here's what we're building, here's the impact of Glenwood Springs. Hey, RAFTA board, can we have a larger conversation about helping with this major infrastructure piece? $4 to $8 million is still a lot of money to us. And so any help that we can give, I think that's the venue maybe that we should apply this to, because I feel like this 22 spaces, and yes, certainly buses do weigh a lot and have a disproportionate impact on our infrastructure, but it's the kind of impact we want. We're not talking about 4 trash trucks every day that we took care of that. This does accomplish a lot of the goals that we have for transportation, for climate, for all the stuff we've been working towards. So I don't know how we can't be supportive of this, knowing that we do have a venue through our representation on RAFTA to talk about the larger projects. So I, for one, am really excited about it. I think it's well planned. I'm excited that the RAFTA headquarters and this transit center, I hope that the BRT comes. This is the first part of making BRT land here. So we have that overlap between the Hogback and the Up Valley. But I will be supporting this application.
Counselor Zelinski. Oops.
So I have one more question, just for clarification. If there is a roundabout, it's going to be at that corner right across from Compass Peak. Is that what we're talking about? That intersection? Thank you.
Counselor Schechter.
Comment, and our attorney can cut me off if he wishes. I understand the incremental 22, and I'm not happy with that number. That doesn't mean I won't support this, and I do like the partnership that we have with RAFTA. I'm not always convinced that Glenwood gains more than RAFTA does and other communities, but I will say with a sad heart that if I looked at Glenwood Springs and wanted to develop the best transit center ever that meets everybody's needs, RAFTA would buy them all. Thank you.
How was that comment? But I think you allowed it. It just happened so fast. We are going to, as long as there are no additional comments or questions from our council at the moment, we'll go ahead and open it to public comment. So we'll see if anybody here in the audience would like to talk. And then we'll also see if anybody online would like to talk specifically about this item. Okay, I'm gonna close public comment. I'm gonna bring it back to council. Okay, Counselor Curtis.
I move we approve the proposed transit center with conditions and approvals as proposed.
Counselor Zelinski.
I second that.
Okay, on this one, I'm gonna open it up to some comments before I call for the question, okay? I just saw Counselor Dem's slate. Come on.
Okay, so in general, yes, buses are great. All that's good. Thank you, RAFTA. Fantastic. But when it comes down to, I feel our last chance, and yes, I did hear that there could be further discussions about contributing to the roundabout. I feel that at this point, I feel like I'm giving away the farm at $108,000 for you guys to help us out with that roundabout. And I'm struggling with that to say yes with this. I see all the benefits. Yes, it's for Glenwood, it's for the Valley. And I like to be a player in the Valley. I like that it's regional. I get it. But I also feel like this is our last chance to tell you, we love you guys, but you got to bring more. And $108,000 is not enough. So I'm on the fence at this point, and I'm not sure I can support this.
Counselor Zelinski.
So I was just going to say, we can all pretty much agree that we have a traffic problem in Glenwood Springs. And, the only way we're going to address this is to get people options that don't involve a personal passenger vehicle. And so we have to invest in some infrastructure, and a transit center at the west end of a transit center at the west end of town, where a lot of that traffic is originating, is, I think, vital to that. So, RAFTA has proven themselves to be a strong partner in the past. I anticipate they will be in the future. And for that reason, I support this.
Any additional comments? Okay. I just want to comment that, or maybe ask that RAFTA continue to be mindful that if we become this regional transit kind of location for the whole of RAFTA, that you remember that when the buses start up in the morning in West Glenwood, they're starting up and they're warming up in our community, and that, the emissions from that are going into our air here in Glenwood. And when there's additional traffic, because everything circles back around to Glenwood, into West Glenwood, or, that you be mindful of that. The additional traffic, the additional lights, the additional just infrastructure that we will weather because we want to be a good partner. We want to help and be part of fixing this traffic issue that really does decrease the quality of life for our residents. We want to be a part of the solution. And yet, my fellow counselors made very, very good points about where we are as a community and where we are as a council financially with our commitment. We hope that you guys do come to a partnership on this. So with that, I'm going to call the question. A question or wrapping up? I thought you already spoke. Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Ryan Gordon, will this be, if this didn't happen at all, any of this, with the current approvals with the BLD and the hotel that's coming up and the other undeveloped parcels, would a roundabout be necessary with the current conditions of what we're going to see in the next 1 to 3 years?
Yeah, a roundabout is needed. Some sort of traffic treatment at the intersection is needed, and we've identified a roundabout as the right solution. So
Okay.
the answer is yes.
Thank you. That helps me. Appreciate it.
Counselor Dunn,
Well, okay, one more question to just
perseverate on this.
yeah,
Perseverate.
whatever. I just need to clear it in my mind. What is going to be the next opportunity to talk about funding for this round? How do you guys feel like you would come to the table together and say, hey, the 108 is great, but it turns out we need a little more? How would this transpire?
So I think we need to get a little further down the road in the design so that we know a little bit more about how much it's going to cost and when we're going to be able to build it. And then I think we need to figure out how much money we've got available. I think we need to talk to the neighbors in that area and see who thinks they're responsible for what. We're going to have to measure this against other projects that we've got. I mean, on the $8 million end, that's a lot of money.
That's a lift.
On the $4 million end, that's still a lot of money, but it's a different conversation. We just don't know enough yet.
But this is something that administration would move forward with and say, hey, this is where we are, and we're so you feel comfortable that this could happen, this discussion will happen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Hey, I think I'll call the question now. Thank you.
It passes 7-0.
Thank you for bringing this in front of us.
Thank you, council, and thank you to your staff and everyone for working with us on this. This was a difficult one, and I really appreciate everyone's efforts.
Absolutely. Thank you to all your efforts as well. Okay, great. Moving on. Ryan Gordon, engineer, Southbridge update.
Yeah, hello, Council. Ryan Gordon, city engineer for the Southbridge update. So we've had some movement. That'll be a little bit longer update than normal. Not too much more. So I'll give you a quick rundown. So obviously we've had the 50%. We're working with Jacobs Consulting, our engineer, to progress that 50% to the 90% design, making some changes and modifications to try to bring down costs on various elements. That 90% is due around May 1st. So again, we're working with them to kind of clarify and try to, let's say fine tune certain pieces. We met with the airport board this morning. As you recall, we've made some changes, particularly raising the road at the end of the runway to give the airport back some more usable space. We had a great conversation with them to talk about the impacts to the airport and how to mitigate that. So went very well. The airport's going to be going out for an RFP to do a kind of an airport master plan. So that dovetails really nicely into what we're doing. So we're working with them closely to make sure items and elements that we're designing for Southbridge tie into what they're doing for the airport in the long term. We've also had a recent meeting, our first meeting with CDOT and with the county that occurred earlier this week. The point of that was to start that first conversation with both entities to talk about cost sharing to make up the difference between what we have right now, so to speak, in the bank and what the total project cost is. That meeting went okay. Nothing was decided. We've basically, result of it was, hey, look, let's continue to talk and see where we have some synergies and where we can move forward. So we are looking to have additional conversations with both CDOT and the county on whether or not monies from those two entities can be applied to the project. And just to be clear, right now, no CDOT or Garfield County money is in the project budget as we speak. Certainly, we're progressing some other ideas. One of the ideas that we brought up in the work session that we're still talking about is some sort of toll on the bridge. That's something that I think we're absolutely moving forward with right now. Again, we need to do it now if we ever want to do it, because in the NEPA documents for the EA and the environmental documents, we have to show the impacts of a toll. So we're working through that with our consultant. One of those things that we're looking at right now, in order to mitigate those costs, is the funding source, City of Glenwood Springs. What we do is we exempt all city residents from the toll, and everybody else would be subject to whatever toll we want. So again, we're working through those details and trying to figure out all that stuff. And again, our next big deliverable is May 1st. We have some additional conversations with other landowners on right-of-way. In fact, we're starting to issue out the notice of intents for some of the easements we're looking for the project. So we're progressing the project quite well. Any questions?
Counselor Sachter,
Is it just questions? No comments?
questions right now.
I'll hold.
I mean, really, it's just, yeah, I guess it's either because we don't have to take a motion or anything. So,
Correct.
well, don't hold off. Just go ahead. You're good.
I understand that we have to move ahead early in the process on tolls. And I support that regardless of what we do. And my rationale, regardless of what we get from this funding gap, which I would support it coming only from other partners. That's a separate discussion. But I think the toll will be critical for the ongoing maintenance of this way down the road, that we're all going to be gone, and there are going to be maintenance costs that are borne totally by the city. And I think the toll for that reason, not even a punitive one, or traffic control, would be extremely justified. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Ryan? Counselor Sims.
Do we have a date yet for continued discussions with the county and CDOT?
As of this point, we don't have a specific date. Everybody's going to kind of go back to their groups and have a discussion. And Steve Boyd is working with the county to figure out when we can have that next conversation with them. We certainly have conversations on a weekly basis with CDOT, but we do expect to have another conversation. I can't tell you exact date of when that is.
Okay, do we have a deadline when we have to have all of our financing lined up, or?
No, there's not a specific deadline other than when we have to pay the bills, which will be sometime down the road. But look, we've got some work to do here. I mean, the next step in this process is for us, the city, to come forward to these other partners and say, this is what we're proposing. And that's going to take a little bit of, conversation between you guys and a little bit of work on staff side. So we're going to need, I think, a couple of meetings before we do that. And I would think that we would have a meeting with the county maybe in April, something like that, ballpark.
Okay, great. Counselor Godus.
I would just suggest that we have those conversations in executive session since it's subject to negotiation. I think it's important just because this council, not to exclude future counselors, certainly they're going to have a huge role in carrying this out. But we are so far along in this council that we have now has such a deep understanding. I think that negotiation and executive session conversation is important to have with this council. And as always, Ryan, thank you so much for all your work. Last question I have is, do we have significant, I'll say, concerns about federal funding freezes and rural surface transportation grants being rescinded in light of recent executive orders? I know that might be a political conversation, but we saw it with raise grants and other things.
Yeah, that's a good question. We've obviously the money's going from FHWA, then CDOT's administering those funds, and we're a partner with CDOT. We've had conversations with CDOT. They don't know the answer definitively, but they are feeling pretty confident that the funds for Southbridge are fairly safe. However, I say that, and there really is, the money has not been transferred from the federal government to CDOT as far as I'm aware of, and as far as our partners at CDOT are. So there is a chance that they could get pulled back. But I think the wheels have been in motion long enough for what the grant that we received and the time frame we received, that it's fairly protected. But I can't give you a definitive answer. That's the best I can give you.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.
Any questions from the public? We'll open it to public comment. Anyone have any comments this evening, either in person or online regarding the Southbridge update? Okay, I'm gonna close that. I'll close that agenda item, and do my fellow city councilors need a break? Anybody need? Okay, great. We're gonna keep going then. On to item number 15, fire evacuation presentation.
While we're getting queued up, we have an evacuation plan that we put together with the help of a contractor over the past maybe, I don't know, we've been working on it for maybe 18 months. It went final and you guys adopted it earlier, I guess before the summer started. We did some public outreach. We did some press releases. We held an event for the community in the community center one evening. It wasn't really very well attended. At the time that we did it, it wasn't really on the top of everybody's minds, but the combination of what's been happening in California and the little flare up that we had over here by Walmart has kind of brought this up to the top of a lot of people's minds. So we wanted to give everybody a chance to just kind of get a refresher on what our plan is and ask any questions.
Okay. I guess I don't want.
It's all right.
I guess so. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Real small, but it's. We have it.
Yeah, we have it in our pocket.
I'm not sure how you make it bigger. Ryan's kind of my guy.
Nice.
Good evening, council. I'm Joseph Darris, the Chief of Public Safety, and tonight I'm here speaking about this evacuation that the city manager referred to. So I'll be speaking to you in the capacity representing anyway the fire department. To the extent I can answer most of your questions, but to his point, we went over this a year or so ago, for those of you that were here. So I'm not really going to rehash that again. This is just more of a little bit of an update and kind of give you an understanding of where we are as a fire department and public safety as an entity overall. In case you get questions, and I'm sure some of you have received some questions, we certainly have about the city's readiness and the public safety apparatus to respond to some kind of major fire event. So in the way of history and background, you recall again, we did commission a study through a consultant firm that we had from the Front Range area. That plan was presented to the council in 2024, in the spring of 2024. We did make that evacuation plan available to the public. It's on our website. And then again, as Mr. Boyd said, we did have a public outreach meeting at the rec center. Less than desirable attendance there, but nonetheless, we did, present this and make it available to our constituents. That was in September. And then again on the website. And then depending on the desirability, we may look for another opportunity to host another one of those as fire season approaches. So the public expectations, I just want to kind of go over this a little bit. There is some misinformation around our community on the law enforcement side concerning enforcement on what's commonly known as Bong Hill, just to the east of Walmart, that property there. And as you all are aware, that's outside the city limits. So for enforcement efforts, we're hamstrung to go in there and do anything there. On the fire side, that is part of our protection area. And so we do respond to fires there. And we will continue to work with challenges in that area. But again, it is in the county, and so we're a little bit limited about enforcement and moving those folks along there. So the systems that some of the things you might have heard about on the news from the LA fires were that they were challenged with water resources there for whatever reason. But those in this field who've been in this field for a long time share with me that there's no water system in the United States that would have been able to satisfy the demands of that fire. In the fire world, they call that a conflagration, where you have an immense amount of fire spreading over an area very, very rapidly. And so I'd ask you to think about in Louisville, Colorado, we had those fires over there in the Front Range. That's what a conflagration looks like, where it's a very rapidly evolving event. It's overwhelming the fire crews and the resources that we have available. And so when we talk about water resources, which I'll get into here in a second, that you should be able to understand that a little bit better. So what I think most people get, but as we continue to open fire hydrants to address a fire, then that reduces our capacity and the pressures that we have to effectively fight that fire. Checking in with Matt Langhorst and some of his team,
I'm told that we have large diameter pipes that are required that we need to sufficiently provide enough water resource to deal with large fires. But when you start talking about Grizzly Creek or some of those, particularly in the county area, then some of those are a little bit more limited. And they're outside the city's control. So we don't necessarily have control about how those water systems are provided to us. But when you do that again, of course, it compromises other water systems. And I'm going to get into how we might have to affect other neighborhoods in order to have sufficient water supply to fight a particular fire. So with respect to our preparedness and our training, in fact, just Tuesday, a couple of days ago, Deputy Chief Doug Gerald and I went to a meeting with the state fire officials. That included federal partners, state, Garfield County officials, Larimer County, and Mesa County Fire Authority. So there's a room of about 50 people in this room. This is something that occurs annually. We all meet and we kind of go over the understanding for mutual aid responses, agreements, MOUs, MOAs. And in particular, there's a financial component there that we really need to take a look at. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. County emergency managers there and communications personnel, stakeholders. And these mutual aid agreements, they're operational periods that we have to comply with. And you start ordering aircraft and things like that, the price tag on that can rise very, very quickly. So we want to make sure we have those in place. We have an understanding of how that works so that our exposure to those costs are minimized. Essentially, once this grows beyond our capacity, the fire district here at Glenwood Fire, we would turn that over to the county. We have an arrangement with them where I sign a document turning that control of that incident over to them, and then from there into the state and then into the federal resources there. So moving forward about this water access I referred to earlier, we do have a number of water tanks here in Glenwood Springs. I don't have it with me now, and I'll make it available to you through the water department that outlines where those tanks are and their capacity. Many of these tanks that we do have here, and I understand from Matt that it's very robust, exceed 1 million gallons of water, and many others are around the 500,000 gallons of water. So they have a large capacity there. The water department does have the ability to redirect and shut off zones to allow for more directed water if we need it on demand. But when you do that, sometimes we might have to restrict access to a particular neighborhood. We have all this water going somewhere. We might have to shut somebody out for a little while, but then it's replenished pretty rapidly through the team that we have and some of the systems that we have in place as a city. We do have more than 700 hydrants and large capacity tanks supported by the water plant and equipment, and they can do a lot of this stuff remotely. So this graphic there might be a little hard to see because it's a little bit small, but it just kind of outlines our facility and water flows and the availability of water that we have in the city to fight that. And again, I'm harping on this because I want to try to mitigate people's fears about what they had in LA. And again, even if they had a system as robust as this, that might not have helped because again, the winds and everything else that they can't really overcome. But nonetheless, we do have a robust system here and we feel pretty good about where we stand. And in fact, we're starting to undertake an ISO review, which is the independent, how insurance companies rate us here. And we're currently at a level 2 out of a level of 5 system. So we're on the higher end. As we review that, they take into consideration our water resources and accessibility to water. So that's and again, staffing and a number of other things, but this is one of the larger components to that study that occurs every 10 years. If you're unaware, our coverage area in the fire department covers 72 square miles. And again, it goes outside the city limits. Our typical staffing on any one day is no fewer than 8 firefighters and 1 battalion chief. Sometimes that can go as 9, 10, or 11. But typically it's around 8. And again, that also includes paramedics and EMTs on those crews. We're almost approaching the end here. So these polygons, which we went into in detail with our report that we had previously last year, there are a number of neighborhoods that are divided up into polygons. That's not necessarily important to anybody here, but it helps us with the communication system. So when we call in and say, hey, we need to evacuate, Oasis Creek. Well, the dispatcher at the communication center does not know what that means. So they're numbered by, 6104 or whatever that is. They pull that up on a map. All those neighborhoods and residents are identified there, and then they can send out mass messaging systems through Everbridge or whatever that people have signed up for to start the evacuation process. That then triggers a response from law enforcement and the public works team to initiate those evacuation routes that we've been spending a lot of time on with those A-line breaks and some of those other things. So our next steps coming up here in the spring, public safety personnel, police and fire leadership are getting together to kind of go over a tabletop exercise make sure everybody has a pretty good grasp, again, a refresher about how these egress plans are going to work and who has what responsibilities. The A-line breaks have been in place for a little while. I believe there are 3, if I'm not mistaken, 2 for sure, maybe 3. And then the Public Works staff, Matt Langhorst, has determined that he's going to procure quite a bit of equipment, whether that's traffic cones, K-rails, or whatever it is, and store them in a dedicated area so that the day that we need to go get that stuff, we didn't find out that they use it on traffic control at a RAFTA project or a school project or something. We have everything there that we need. Lastly, this is just a diagram of kind of how in a larger document of how these neighborhoods are broken up, areas of refuge, rest areas, schools, what have you. So all of this information of like these maps and those polygons that I refer to are again in that larger evacuation document. If you need that, just let me know and I'll get it to you directly. Otherwise, we do have it available on our fire department website. So with that, I hope I've been able to provide you with some information. So should you get calls in the future, you have some information to refer to. Let people know that we are on top of it. Our training is ongoing and all the resources that the city's provided for us to be effective in those firefighting efforts.
I'm going to go ahead and open it up to council questions and comments. It's very open at this point. Councilor Schechter.
Thank you, Joseph. I have a question, to the extent you can answer it, has to do with Figure 1, legal authority in disasters and kind of the decision-making chain. We learned in the past, sometimes we learned at Storm King and even in the case maybe of Holcim that chain wasn't as well established as it might be today. So I'm wondering if you could say, if we had a true disaster, not a local containable event, a disaster that was determined out of our control, whether it could be a train or it could be a fire. You have the city, you have the county, you have CDOT, you have the state, you have the feds. How quickly and how does that, to the best you can tell us how that chain of command gets transferred and moved, particularly in the case where, hey, you got to evacuate half of Glenwood. How does that get transferred and moved along, and how quickly in this day and age as opposed to 30 years ago?
I'll presume that we're in a better place today because of technology advancements than we were at those times you're referring to. I'm not sure about that. I wasn't here. I can say that the transfer of command and all of those kind of things happens pretty quickly because we've had these agreements ahead of time. So if something goes beyond our operational capacity, we immediately, again, referring to that form I talked about, I signed a document over to the sheriff's office or the county emergency manager, Chris Bornhold, and then it's taken over by them. And then they determine what their operational capacity is, and then typically that immediately goes to the state. And I'll use Grizzly Creek as an example of that. That rapidly went beyond our control, even though it was in our service area. It was turned over and then became major complex fire where the feds got involved and all of that kind of thing. If we have a situation in our response area, let's say in South Canyon, outside the city limits, but it's still in our response area, the county then is in charge of determining evacuations. Even though I'm the fire chief and will manage the fire, evacuations come because it's in the county and they have the authority to do that, whether it's in 4 Mile or South Canyon or wherever that might be. So I think that we do have systems in place to meet at an incident command or joint command, unified command, meet with the county managers or the sheriff or whoever that authority might be and talk about how we're going to transfer that authority over, sign those documents, and then it gets moved up the chain fairly rapidly to state or federal level. In our region, you have to understand that we do have BLM property, right? And U.S. Forest Service property, which is the reason why we had that meeting that I referred to on Tuesday. So those partners are there. So we have contact with them, direct contact on the phone or whatever we might need to do to get them kind of stood up to start taking over some of those and get the resources that we might need to deal with that problem. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, just one more specific. In the case of, we've got the A lines. You guys have done a ton of work compared to what we were used to in the past. In the case where an evacuation, either partial or full, is required, to the best of your knowledge, where in the chain of command is that? Because we're using the Fed highway and the state highway. At what level does that get coordinated?
So we do have a traffic management plan, which I also can share with you at some point if you have a desire to take a look at that. So because we would be affecting the highway, then that's where CSP gets involved and CDOT. And so we also have an arrangement with them about how that might look. So for example, if we needed to evacuate an area in West Glenwood, we have designs to close that highway as soon as we can, whether that's all the way out at the 133 from Gypsum and limit traffic. So we have complete access to either 2 or 4 lanes. For example, if we needed all 4 lanes to move everybody to the west, we might want to close the eastbound lanes out, in Newcastle somewhere, so we can have access to all 4 lanes of traffic moving them west out of Glenwood. That's there. So with respect to that, it's kind of a joint command because the State Patrol rather, and CDOT would be completely in charge of that. So it'd be kind of a collaboration because we're going to handle the evacuation inside the city and get them moved onto a highway, which is where CDOT and the CSP would need to take control of that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions from Sumner? You're all set? Counselor Zelinski.
So we got an email from a resident that lives out in No Name, and he was concerned that there was no mention in the guide of zones 7063 and 7068. And I'm wondering if that, if you can speak to if that's been addressed or not.
I cannot, just because I don't have the entire document in front of me to go through that. What I can tell you is that I can find out about that.
That'd be awesome.
And then
That- would
I can either
appreciate
get
it.
back with you directly, or you can give me that person's information.
Yep, that's what I'll do. I'll forward this.
Yeah, are you gonna forward it? Because I
Yep.
have it open as well.
Yep.
Okay, great. First, I actually have a couple questions.
Yes, please.
In the event, okay, so number one, you said it's on the website. Can you let everybody know what website you're referring to that they would be able to find this?
Yeah, I apologize. The fire department's website.
So if you just go to this, I search term, City of Glenwood Springs Fire Department, it would be on there. And then where is it within the fire department on that?
I don't know about that. I do think we have the opportunity though, through Brianna's office to also attach it to the city's general
Okay,
website.
Yep.
Is that right, Steve?
oh yeah, so it's glenwoodfire.com. And then we do on the left-hand side, it looks like there's all kinds of links. So that's great. That's awesome. What apps or notification services should people be signed up for?
Thank you for asking that question. We've been harping on this for a long time and we still don't seem to get the response that we'd like. So they need to go to garco911.com,
Okay,
GARCO 911.com. And it takes 2 minutes probably to sign up on there. All that does is give us contact information like cell phones or something. We don't need a whole history, or lineage of your family, whatever, so we can reach you. Now that is one system. There's another system that's in place where people do not need to sign up for. If it's a major disaster like coal seam or something taking over the city, messaging will go out to everybody within a geographical area, like a geofence that we can determine. So if somebody's here visiting the hot springs from France or something, they're still going to get that message as
Yeah.
well. They don't need to be signed up for, but typically that Garco 911 is probably the most frequently used system. And then we try to connect with Ray Alexander and other folks like that who can message that stuff for us too as partners.
and that's Roaring Fork Road and Weather.
Yes,
There's
thank
Ray Alexander.
Yes.
So you actually jumped the gun for me, which was great. And that is that I had someone very nicely, but directly say, if there's a fire, am I supposed to they live in West Glenwood, they're a neighbor and a friend. And they said, should we just plan to leave on the A-line break off of the highway at the bottom of Storm King? And I immediately said, if you need to be evacuated, you'll get a notification via text and or a phone call or
Text message.
text
Because
message.
it's kind of on like blast, right? We
Mhm.
can't call everybody and
Okay.
communicate conversations with them. But
Well, I wasn't expecting hey, it's Glenwood. It's a small town. We're already doing that. I've already been on the phone for an hour at that point. Do you see the smoke? Totally. My aunt would know for sure, and I would have already talked to her. But the point being is that everybody will give a text. What about people who don't text?
That's probably a question that I'd have to find out from the communication authority because I don't know what
Yep.
the technology is there. Hopefully they're getting them at, like you said, from friends or family or Facebook
Mhm.
or whatever might be there. But let me find out about that. No texting or,
Okay. Okay. I don't know how many people, I don't know very many people who don't, but, and then,
Can I talk about the A-line thing real quick?
yeah, for sure.
I want to be real careful with that. 'Cause what we don't want to do is have people just going to the A-line and trying to open the
Yeah.
gate on their own and then they're popping out onto ISA. We do not want that. I think the best course of action there, recommendations to them to follow instructions from public safety personnel. There'll be firefighters in the area, police officers or whoever, and we'll direct them where they need to be because that needs to be a very coordinated egress effort on behalf of Public Works and everybody involved.
Okay, so to kind of reiterate a couple things, and then I want to talk about the insurance item, but so what I heard is make sure you're signed up for garco911.com. Make sure
Absolutely.
you're signed up for those. In the event that there was an incident that required an evacuation, you're going to get a text message.
Yes.
We're zoned out. If you want to know more about it, go to glenwoodfire.com, dig into the documents there, because all of them and the plans to the best, kind of an overview, 30,000 foot, because every incident is going to be so specific. So if there's a fire in South Glenwood, the evacuation route could be totally different than if there's a fire in West Glenwood.
That's correct.
And so we cannot tell you exactly what your evacuation route is at this moment in time.
Yeah, that'd be too presumptuous, right? We just don't know. We have to.
We
deal
just
with-
don't know. Yeah.
But, we have people in place, in our prevention bureau, and we have specialists, Mina Bolton. People can call us and ask those questions directly. And we're very happy to talk them through that, or they come down and take a look at things and talk with us, and we're happy to do that.
And what number would that be? Just the landline for the fire department?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, great. I can actually probably find that, but, okay. One last question.
Sure.
So what I just heard you say earlier is that there is every 10-year assessment about our water systems and probably our PSI, like our ability to fight fire based on our water availability.
That's one component of it.
I
Yes.
think that was redundant, but, when was the last time that was done?
I understand it's every 10 years, so I'm gonna take a shot and say 2014-ish. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Okay.
I know that system, they're now looking at Carbondale and another agency of Vallis. We're anticipating they're moving their way south. So we're
Mhm.
already starting to pull the data and the documents in preparation for that review.
Okay.
And other things that are considered in that are locations of fire stations, response times. And there's a number of things that affect our response times. The number of staffing we have on duty, right? Other calls for service.
Okay.
The water thing is certainly a big deal.
Yeah.
And Matt's team has really worked hard to make sure we have every resource that we need available to us. They go out and flush and test those hydrants regularly to make sure they're all working. And then again, there's just a lot of documentation that we're pulling now to be able to be prepared for that review.
But what I also heard, which was great, is that if, based on all of these infrastructure projects that we have completed, making sure that water lines are functional and strong and replaced as needed, in the event that they're, that when we're trying to do this kind of this actuary study of understanding this, those tax dollars that goes into improvements and keeping our infrastructure top notch will in turn potentially have us be a more insurable community for our property.
Absolutely. So those
Mhm.
investments that we made or you all made
Yeah.
early on.
Yep.
This is where you see the dividends from that, right? And
Excellent.
that we're ready because it can affect insurance rates for sure.
Mhm.
And even when we know with the fires and some of these tanks that were damaged or are outdated.
Yeah.
We're continuing to invest in improving those tanks, the way I understand it from Matt,
Mhm.
so that we are prepared to deal with them. So,
Yeah.
so you're investing on the front end to be able to find those again, those dividends on the back end here.
Excellent. Thank you. That was all my questions. Thank you so much. Counselor Zelinski, your light is still lit
Oh,
up. Did you-
shit.
Okay. Wasn't that big of a deal? Okay. Okay, awesome. Okay, cool. Let's see here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was awesome. Any public comments on this one? Yeah, okay. Come on up to the mic. Yep, 3 minutes at the mic.
Thank you, Chief Darris. Appreciate all your hard work. And I'd like to add a few things. And we did have our family meeting, our extended family meeting this last week on what to do. So we all have a little plan and downloaded some lists of things for people to gather. So I've been investigating rooftop sprinklers, which my insurance company will lower my rate by the amount that they raised it last time, which was 25% because of the fire danger here. So I'm excited about that. We intend to buy a water pump and hose because we're probably 150 feet away from the river. And I understand that that will probably, if we use our own domestic water supply, it'll probably reduce the pressure for the entire system. So we're just going to take it from the river. That'll also be an alternate escape plant should we need to use our raft to get out of there, because we are located at the corner of 8th and Midland, one of the highest used roads in this city. Scares me. Next to me is Ben West and one of his properties. And he's such a good neighbor. He's taking down a tree that is a problem. It's a beautiful elm tree that I should have cut down a long time ago when it was a seedling, but it wasn't on my property. But Ben is taking it down tomorrow. Thank you, Ben. And what I'd also like to add is abatement on private property. This is a big problem, especially in our neighborhood and in a lot of neighborhoods around Glenwood Springs with these elm trees that are in various states of demise and are highly flammable when you have mostly dead wood. We have a tree across from us where Ralph Trapney's driveway is, but it's on the property of an absent landowner. And it is dropping 20-foot branches onto the ground. So nothing's been done about that. I understand private property, you can't do anything about it. Well, I disagree. In the state of California, at least the area I was from, you got an abatement notice if you had weeds and other trash on your property. And if you did not take care of it, you were fined, and then you were, let's see, one of my girlfriends, her dad was in charge of rototilling problem properties. So you get billed for that. We need to do something here. This is kind of a desperate situation. We are in a valley that is hard to escape from. And let's see. I don't know if we need to change our ordinances, but that needs to be done. You can't pile up garbage, firewood on your property, meaning the trees. Rebates for rooftop sprinklers from the city.
Lori,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for bringing those ideas to us. Anybody else here? I think I'm going to get to the online people, but first, did you want to talk as well? Making sure. Okay. That's such a lovely.
It's kind of plus. Yeah.
So
Third try.
we are going to allow Kevin from Kevin's iPhone to come on. We'll transition him to a panelist. Kevin, we need you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Please give us your name and that you live in city limits, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. My name is Kevin Goodman. I work with 4 Points Funding. We are the owners of the Altitude Apartments adjacent to the Walmart, and that butts up against the Soper's View parcel and the one that the fire chief was talking about. And I am here to voice my deep concern about the fire risk that this property poses, especially in light of the fire that occurred on the evening of January 7th. That was caused by the homeless encampments that constantly occur on this parcel. I understand the conflict that parcel is in the jurisdiction of the county, so the hands are tied in the local departments. But I would like to request a formal work session to discuss preventative measures that can be taken to reduce this risk. It's deeply concerning, the fire that happened, just a few weeks ago. And I believe if the conditions were worse and it wasn't in the middle of the winter with snow on the ground, the outcome could have been devastating. So just wanted to get in front of everyone and, voice my concerns and see what we can do as a community to address this issue.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm just going to comment really briefly and just encourage you to take that concern to the county, because I believe that they, as their, the jurisdictional power source on this one, I think they're probably the people you need to speak to about that parcel in particular. And I can assure you that within Glenwood, we are having those conversations and regularly trying to, case in point, our chief here this evening, trying to make sure that we are insulated and we have a plan to be able to move forward, whatever the circumstance. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a collaboration between the town and the county. I mean, to the resident who just posed her concerns, it's clearly a significant risk to the town of Glenwood, and would hate to see something happen. I know the county doesn't have many resources, and that's what we've been told when we have approached the county. So I just would love to, get a work session or see what we can do together to take some action here.
I believe on Monday morning, I'm not usually back and forth with comments, public comments, but on Monday morning, I'm actually meeting with representatives from the county and a few other representatives. So I think we're already in the works, but
Okay.
thank you. And I
Awesome.
really appreciate it.
Good
Yeah,
to hear. Thank you.
take care. We can move Greg Jung over to panelist. Greg Jung.
Ingrid, can you hear? Okay, there I am.
Hi, Greg. Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm still tech surprise, tech rookie. Okay,
You're doing
so
awesome.
I want to thank staff and the stakeholders and the contractor for coming together for a great plan. And I think it's comprehensive. And a couple things, I guess and thank you, Aaron, too, for bringing up the email I sent to council and some staff about the oversight of the two areas, which is evacuation from No Name. And related to that is I've seen that a fire truck or emergency personnel from Glenwood were stuck responding to an accident in the canyon, and they had to call Gypsum out, which is like 20 plus miles away. So I think trying to manage the traffic control through No Name tunnels could be part of evacuation planning or emergency response. So I'm going to dive into some details, and I know it says a final draft, but maybe the police and fire chief things should be updated to public safety chief. And under critical features of critical facilities, there's a absence of including the manners 1 and 2. And I think it's important to try to include those because they're very close to the railroad tracks in case of a derailment, potential hazmat. And also the elevators go out. And I've had people that, like one instance, they were out for like 3 days. And the people that are wheelchair confined could not really get out at all. One guy was trying to slide down the stairs on his butt. And another thing that's kind of missing is when you talked about animal evacuation, there was no mention of CARE, but it talked about Garfield County Fairgrounds. So if CARE could be reached out to, since it's closer, I know they probably don't have large animal facilities, but perhaps they could be one of the stakeholders. And let's see. And I think training is important, and maybe especially including the other agencies involved. And couple things to add is Everbridge is another resource in order to get emergency alerts, not necessarily evacuations. And then finally, I'm on the Rural Fire Board, and also I took a online class to become a wildfire neighborhood ambassador through Fire Adapted Colorado, and they're coming up with another session. So if people are interested, I think I tried to go to the FACO site to find out, but it's another online course and has a lot of information. And there are a couple people in West Glenwood that have taken it as well, and then one person up in Mountain Springs Ranch. So I encourage people to take a look at that and become a neighborhood ambassador. Think like some of the things about helping people evacuate neighbor to neighbor instead of relying on professionals. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Greg, will you do us a favor? Will you just repeat the name of that online website?
FACO, Fire Adapted Colorado.
Okay. Thank you so much. I hope you and Sean have a lovely evening. Take care.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all.
Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna bring it back. We have some public comment. Any additional questions, comments, or before we transition, do you guys have anything you want to add? Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chief. We really appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on. Did I hear still no bathrooms? Okay. Item number 16, ordinance 2025-04, model traffic code cell phones.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. Before you have ordinance number 4, series of 2025. These are required changes to update the model traffic code that we've adopted in Glenwood for enforcement to match state statute. As you know, starting in 2025, you can't have a handheld device in your hand. It has to be hands-free when you're operating a motor vehicle. So that's what you have in front of you.
Any questions? Council Weimer.
Why doesn't state statute just automatically filter down?
That's a good question.
That's a great question. It's the model traffic code is actually put together by CDOT, and every law enforcement agency or every jurisdiction adopts it independently to enforce. So,
So if we didn't adopt it,
we wouldn't have the ability to write the ticket, essentially. Some things are, and I shouldn't have said state statute because the model traffic code is in fact a model traffic code is a model for everybody. And so we adopt it in individual jurisdictions. The state does a similar thing for the state troopers, obviously, for their enforcement. But the whole thing isn't codified in state statute. It's just referred to by reference, just like we do in state statute.
does that allow municipalities to sort of pick and choose which state statutes they want to?
It does.
enforce?
In this instance, this is one that we can't choose not to do, but we do oftentimes amend when you'll see when we do an adoption, and we'll probably do we'll probably update to the 2024 this year, maybe. I think we're on 2020. Maybe we'll do it next year. Usually we do it a year out. Where I was going with that is that we will adopt differing standards for speed limits on certain streets, things like that. That we do local amendments for. But the bulk of the model traffic code, we all adopt a similar thing across the state.
So there are states, this is just a little learning session, sorry. So there are state statutes that are required for municipalities to adopt, and then there are others that are optional.
We can do some local amendments to the model traffic code. Think about it like when we adopt building codes. It's a very similar process, right? Those are model codes that we're adopting.
It feels like one is the law and the other is a code. I feel a little different.
Yeah, I mean, when we call them like the building code, it's not the code until we adopt it as the code. It's a model until we do that. It's not enforceable on its own, much like the model traffic code isn't enforceable on its own until we adopt it.
And we can make things more restrictive, but we can't make them
Less restrictive is typically the issue. And like I said, we'll do some, when we're adopting model codes, for instance, on the building code side, we might change snow loads for our geographic location.
Right.
On the traffic code, we might adopt particular standards for speed limits on certain types of streets within our jurisdiction. Great example is I think we're still doing it. For a long time, we increased, we doubled or even tripled at times what the fines were for, say, speeding in a school zone, because council felt that was super important to really enforce, or the cost in the fines and enforcement of passing a school bus with a stop sign out with flashing lights, things like that.
So Chief, then so when we pass this tonight, do you take this down to the troops then like tomorrow and say, this is now a change to what we can enforce?
Well, he's gonna have to wait till the next reading in 10 days, but yes.
Oh, after the second reading, but then it filters down to the force and you change what you can.
Yes.
Just like a quick update to them.
Correct.
But since this is new, where are we at for fines for this?
I don't remember what the fine schedule is honestly for it, because that's not something that changed. I don't remember.
But this is new.
No, I mean, in the model traffic code, we didn't do a local amendment, so I don't have the whole model.
Mike.
Carl, your mic.
Sorry. Sorry, because it's in the body of the model traffic code, I don't remember I don't remember what this specific fine is.
I would like to propose somewhere between 6 and 10 years.
That's fair.
I can't believe how this makes me so angry. I see people with cell phones.
This could help fund some projects. Okay, awesome. Any other questions?
Thanks for the class.
Yeah, awesome. Any comments from the public? Any concerns? Anybody like to speak about this? Okay, I'll see none. I'll close public comment. Bring it back to council for a motion. Counselor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And item 16, ordinance 2025-04 model traffic code cell phones. I would move that we approve this ordinance and adopt the model traffic cell. Oh, code phone. Yeah.
Counselor Sims.
I will second that motion.
Go ahead and call the question.
It's unanimous. It passes.
75 on a first offense, 150 on a second offense.
That's not gonna pay for a lot.
You can pound the phone as evidence.
There's actually a specific section that says you can't do that.
Oh.
You can't seize that.
fun.
I had the same thought, Sumner.
Take it away.
Okay,
Responsibly take it away.
okay. Thank you. Thank you all. And I look forward to seeing that be enforced. I think that it's definitely a concern.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I really liked the reply, your auto reply when you're driving on your text messages that say like, this texting while you're driving causes accidents and I won't be part of that. Yeah, it's great. Okay, financial item number 17.
Looking at it.
I know, yeah. Financial Advisory Board grant direction.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So at the last Financial Advisory Board meeting, we talked about the 2025 grant cycle. And in talking through that, the conversation kind of came up about, it would be helpful if council would give us a little bit of direction on what they would like us to do in terms of a couple of things, because we're going to have pretty constrained dollars next to the number of applicants that we're likely to get. So the couple of specific questions that came up, I put in the staff report. So do you want to award money for Summer of Music and Strawberry Days that we seem to give them every year in a significant amount, and just take that out of FAB's hands? Do you want to have a time limit so people don't get this grant every year and just start to feel like it's part of their operating capital, right? They, kind of get it for 2 or 3 years and then move on. And then are there things that you really would like us to stay away from this year and not fund or put limits on funding? Anything else that you guys would like to give to them? I'm sure they would be happy to listen to, but those are the 3 things that came up specifically.
Counselor Schacht.
Steve, would you refresh us on your staff report, the 81,250 in tourism? How is that parsed out? How does that flow to the charitable or to the donation fund? How does that come from? where?
Yeah, so when we get these applications, they'll either be discretionary or tourism, and then we'll fund each of those based on which that was. So if it's a tourism award, we will just fund it from the $81,000. It's in the tourism fund earmarked for grants.
Okay. So that comes from tourism, not from general fund, and all of it comes from tourism, but the percentage is always split out this way?
Yeah, 7.5% of the tourism fund revenue goes to the grants, and that's how you get that $81,000. We take $50,000 from it sort of off the top for our big events, 4th of July and New Year's. And the rest of that is $81,000. And then the rest of the money is in A&I for the discretionary grants.
Okay, thank you.
Do we do anything at New Year's this year, though?
New
New Year's.
New Year's.
Thank you, New Year's. Okay, Counselor Godus.
Question number 2. This is something the FAB has talked about for a little bit, and they didn't come to consensus on a recommendation to us, so they asked for a recommendation from us. And I think, just in my experience of running nonprofits over the years, most funders do a 2-year on, 1 year off cycle. And the reason for that is, especially the grants that we're giving in the amounts that we're giving, they're not, other than like Historical Society and some of these larger summer musics, they're not significant, but they're not trying to get programs off the ground. They're trying to get programs off the ground and running, but not support their overall organizational budget. And so I guess my suggestion would be, we do something similar to what we've done with our boards and commissions. We give it for a couple of years and then we say you can not apply any your 3rd year. That's the way it's done with most of the grants I've dealt with in my experience with my youth nonprofits. if you want to make it more or less, that's fine, but I think it's helpful because it also incentivizes the nonprofit to go, oh, we're not gonna get that 5,000 from city council this year. We got to go out and find it from somewhere else, which really helps build their donor base up and kind of gives them a hand up.
Counselor Dunn.
Thank you. Quick question. You mentioned the Summer of Music and what
Strawberry
else?
Days.
Strawberry Days. What fund would that come out of if we don't do this?
Well, if we didn't do this, it would have to be a separate ask of some kind. So that would probably have to come from our general fund.
And what's the amount of those both together?
I want to say that Summer of Music, we generally give about $25,000 to, and somewhere in the $10,000 range to Strawberry Days.
So instead of a grant, it's more like a sponsorship, City of Glenwood Springs kind of thing.
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
Okay. One thing, and I would echo what you said about the 2 years on, 1 year off. So thank you.
Counselor Sims.
The funds or the dollar amounts that you have listed there, does that include the deductions that we just granted to the Historical Society last meeting?
Yeah, that's a different thing. The Historical Society doesn't come from this grant funding. It comes directly from the A&I fund.
Okay.
But it's a separate thing from the grants.
That grant that we gave though touched on two different funds, did it not? I could have sworn it did. Didn't we have the matching come from someplace else?
came-
Yeah, we did.
We talked, yeah,
Yeah.
we talked about, they have got to raise some additional money and
Yes.
then we will match that. That part of it would come from the tourism fund. Again, separate from this conversation.
Okay.
Counselor Weimer.
Are there legal rules around who we can exclude from consideration? Just as rules that we're not gonna take organizations that do this or are shaped like that or are
Supporting this or supporting that.
we,
Religious.
Yeah.
are there laws around that stuff?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, and I guess I've never thought about it exactly like that because we typically, as long as it's a nonprofit,
I would say, let me
But
ask-
I mean, I guess where I'm going with that is that I think I'd need to come back to you with how I thought we could exclude particular groups or
Yeah.
types of activities or things like that
Yeah.
without, I mean, you have a fair degree of latitude, but I just want to be real careful that we're adopting some kind of a policy that is, doesn't feel like it's directed specifically at a particular organization to exclude them or something like that.
And does this maybe take into consideration some of the comments that I made at a previous meeting as well?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, then I'm not going to comment on that this evening. Instead, I'll continue to just kind of focus on the subject at hand. Counselor Schechter.
Maybe.
You need to, oh wait, there you go. Hold on one second. There we go.
Summer of Music is not part of Arts and Culture and not part of Parks and Rec.
Its own thing.
Um,
It's a nonprofit.
Yeah, and it's its own nonprofit. We don't know what they're, in addition to the typical 25 that we tend to give them, which by the way, I support because I think it's a great community event and generates a lot of goodwill. Do we know what their total budget is?
Yeah, they need to submit that as part of their application. So we know every year.
Past history roughly?
Yeah, I would have to look. I can do that as we talk, but
And is it, so we don't know the actual ask, do they ask separately each year for a different amount? Okay.
yep.
I would supporting them. And explain the Strawberry Days partnership. It sounds like a token amount, even though it's a chamber event.
Yeah.
So how does that tend to flow?
It is sort of a token amount. It's a chamber event. I asked them last year from the city manager discretionary, we gave them a little bit of money because Devereaux Bridge was closed leading up to that. And we didn't think we were going to be able to use that. So they had to rent, and pay for transportation in from the high school and the mall. So I asked them and they said that worked really well. We'd like to do that again. And I said, if you'd like to do that again, then include that in the grant application that you put in and financial advisory board will consider it.
So it's basically a transportation grant of some kind to help them out.
Yeah, sort of. The other thing that they can apply for is that, they have to rent parks out, right? And we don't want to rob our parks department of that money. Best practices, let them go ahead and earn it because they have earned it. But Strawberry Days would ask for those fees to be paid, by us instead of them.
Got it. Thank you. Just for the record, I support both those events because I think they're a huge plus to Glenwood.
Of course, critical.
So I'd like to kind of just step in really quickly and mention that, you gave us a great pie chart. And when I look at it, I think what I'm hearing is that direction could be given to the FAB board that we'd like to see a higher percentage go to community events. I think we're all supportive of that. Yep, okay. I would, or maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I'm also hearing from a few others that we would like to see that supported. And I will just say that when it comes to social services, I appreciate that we've been able to generously give to them. I too would support 2 years on, 1 year off. I'd like to see some new groups being supported this year that we maybe haven't in past. And I would like to see that social services decrease just a little bit, only because there are other opportunities for funding, and they should not become incredibly dependent or assume that they'll always get these awards. And I want to spread the love a little bit. So, Councilor Gotis.
It does occur to me, logistically speaking, that if we did the 2 on, 1 off, probably 80% of our grant recipients have been getting it for decades.
Totally.
So what I don't want is a cliff where
Mhm.
2 years from now, whoa, we got a ton of
Yeah.
money. So I guess what I would say is just logistically, I think kicking it back to the FAB and saying, hey, if there's a group that's gotten it like 3 of the last 5 years, maybe they get it for the next 2 years. If there's a group that's been getting it for the last 10 years, maybe next year they don't get it, but
Fair.
they should use their discretion in that way. But the goal would be not to all of a sudden have a huge cliff in 2 years where everybody gets it, because I just think logistically that could be problematic. I do think I'm very supportive of that direction, Madam Mayor, of not necessarily the events that we currently have, not necessarily just throwing money at them, but new events. That's the thing that I think this town is always struggling. We used to have so many events because we had community volunteers that would, the try and all these things that used to happen. And then people get old, people move away, people die, and those events just go away. And so whatever we can do to go to some nascent group or a person who's like, man, you got a passion, we can throw some money at it if you have a plan and some people behind it. I don't want to just like give money randomly, but to get some of these events off the ground, I would be supportive of that. And I don't know how we do that as council, but certainly maybe our arts and cultures and our Parks and Rec board, if they're more plugged into the folks that they know. Well, turkey trot. We didn't have a turkey trot this year. Like just one more thing that goes away.
Yeah.
And I think it is one, I know is a volunteer who just got so burnt out, and she's an amazing volunteer. No one came up to support that. So how do we do that? That's a hypothetical question, but in relation to this, I think one of the answer is if we have to pay that person money to keep doing it, I'm okay with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Councilor Zelinski.
So I've never been to an FAB meeting, so I'm not entirely sure how that's run, but I'm wondering, is there some sort of a criteria? I'm thinking of like how the comp plan, like it has to fit in these, do they have that as a guiding document already?
Yes.
Or- okay.
And first, you're missing a lot in FAB meetings. I mean, they really are fun. You should totally come. But yeah, in the application itself, it kind of lists several of those things out. So yeah, they do have some parameters.
So I'm wondering if, based on, maybe there's like a rotating, like, maybe they higher prioritize certain things at different times in a cycle. And maybe that can be kind of put in to try and activate some things that, I'm looking at like arts and it's 2%, like it's a pretty small, there's definitely some organizations and some opportunities that appear to be underrepresented in this pie chart. And so, maybe, I don't know if there's any kind of active recruitment done or any sort of outreach to try and encourage people to do things, but maybe it can be twofold. We prioritize certain things that we want to see, and maybe also we can go out and solicit some things that we're hoping to see.
Councilor Schechter.
But I just took myself off. That's probably a blessing.
Yep.
Steve, maybe, can you give some indication of the delineation between social services and youth development? They're both pretty big categories, and just a couple examples, what would put one in one category and one in the other?
That's a good question. I made this up. I mean, I totally made up these
Oh, okay.
categories. I looked at what other organizations do and how they kind of spread things out. So I made up the categories, and then I went through and looked at all of the awards, and I made up what category they should go into. I will send you the list.
Thank
And related to youth sports, I have mixed emotions about where that money goes. And I'm wondering, has the FAB in your history experience ever considered youth sports more as scholarships based on some kind of progressive or regressive income need as opposed to just throwing money at the organization?
Not really, no.
Well, just thought.
Counselor Gillis.
Similar to that question, I would say half of this, in general, half of the youth sports organizations make applications for scholarships.
Yes.
The other half, it's just a paying a director and it's overhead. And also there's not been a whole lot of conversation on, do swimmers and hockey players, do they need a lot of overhead support or not? I think that's some of the direction they're asking from us, but maybe some of this conversation also is to be had at the FAB level based on this. And then when it comes back to us for funding, for us to go, gosh, we really do like the idea of needs-based scholarships versus paying a director.
Absolutely.
That would be my suggestion anyway.
Did we give you any direction?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for this made up pie chart. Yeah.
Numbers are real.
The numbers are very real.
Yeah.
But the colors are not.
Yeah. Looks great. Glad it made it in the
Sorry
packet.
about that, Steve.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and start some council comments. Do we have any council comments? Councilor Dunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Earlier this evening, we reappointed P and Z Commissioner, or Chairman, I should say, P and Z Commissioner Chairman Waller and Co-Chairman White to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their second term. I want to congratulate them and thank you for signing up again. And also, I'm hoping the fourth quarter report is visible to the public somewhere on the website. It was outstanding. The information you guys compile is absolutely amazing. What we do in 3 months is unbelievable. So thank you for the report and thank you for all the work you guys have done.
I love your comments, but we reappointed Pete Waller and Amy Connerton. Although Joy's awesome.
Are you sure?
Joy's got 3 more years.
Yeah. So,
Let me fix this.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, Joy, you were just appointed again, but no, that doesn't count. It's Amy Connerton tonight with
Thank you.
Chairman Waller. So thank you very much.
Let's see, Counselor Schachter.
A couple things. One, even though it's still obviously, based on what Carl told us, a huge work in progress and legal battles ahead, I think it's appropriate to throw out kudos to our legal support and to the Glenwood Springs Citizens Alliance for what they have done over the years as a grassroots citizen-based group and thrown RMI back on their heels. So just keep that in mind, and they deserve all kinds of kudos. Secondly, we discussed on the next agenda reconsidering the support for the Rifle Correctional Facility. So we now have more time to do some homework, and they have pushed the joint budget decision out to March 5th. And thirdly, I don't want to be too premature, but it's good news. We have a mobile home park for sale with a fairly cooperative owner, and Thistle Rock has taken them on, and they have decided to organize and go ahead with trying to buy the mobile home park, which would be a huge coup for workforce housing here in Glenwood.
That's awesome. Very good. Thank you. Any additional council comments? Okay. Thank you all so much for this evening. I will go ahead and transition to report from city administration.
Okay, yeah, I have a few quick things. We had a meeting of the Detox Center Governance Committee today. And these guys at Mine Springs are hemorrhaging cash to the tune of about $70,000 a month right now. There are things coming down the road, they think, that are going to make it harder to operate the kind of facility they have as a standalone. If that happens, this is probably checkmate for the facility as it is. They came forward with 3 different options today, none of which were good. They got beat up a little bit. The 3 biggest partners in that, the hospital, the county, and us, all sort of, we're disappointed in where we're standing and where we are. So more to come on that, but so everybody knows the Detox Centers is in profound trouble right now. We had an accounts payable person retire. We kind of knew it was coming, so we posted that job. That was the only job that we posted. That's the only job we have out right now. So we're more staffed today than we've been in the time that I've been here. So that is pretty cool. I'm thinking about some kind of a, I don't know, hot chocolate with city manager or something kind of thing. I thought we would do the first one in March. So if people have ideas about any content there or where it would be a good place, please let me know. The person that we hired as director of operations is named Tim Bergman. He is currently the Lake County manager. And it's kind of interesting because when he took the job, he was the first ever Lake County manager. It was these 3 county commissioners that were running the show. They'd be like, I'll take public works and, you take parks and rec. And it wasn't going very well. And so, they decided they're going to hire a manager, and he's the one that went in with no systems or anything in place. And he kind of built all of that. So it's really a perfect fit. I was super happy that he applied, but it's the right time in his life. He wants to live in Glenwood Springs. He's going to start on March 31st. And I think that's going to round out our senior team. So I'm really happy about that. In this week's Transportation Commission meeting, the idea of the RAFTA BRT came up. They got a grant recently, I think, as you guys know, and it's a substantial amount of money. It's a planning and studying grant, right? And it is for a local preference for a bus route to go through town. And I think the 2 routes that have kind of been identified, one's on the Rio Grande, one is on Grand Avenue. The Transportation Commissioner, a couple of them had, some strong opinions about things. I recently saw a text or an email or a social media post or something that says, RAFTA's, jamming this down our throats. And what is true is that the study hasn't started yet, right? They're just going to, and there's a lot of public outreach in it. We're a long ways from that happening. So the narrative that this is over and, we've got to show up to RAFTA's meeting next week or whatever, I think is not quite right. Would you agree? Okay. A few meetings ago, you guys asked me to call some of our friends and neighbors and ask a handful of questions about their tourism promotion activities and stuff. It's taken a little while. I'm almost done with that. I haven't forgotten about it. I think I can get that done next week and I'll send it out to you guys. One of the things that we're going hard to the hoop on is these speed cameras. And I think that we've got a path to actually getting some of these cameras in and up and running on mobile devices. We'll have 2 or 3 of them. That could generate significant revenue. It's hard to know how much, but when we're talking about things like, buses and transportation and that kind of thing, keep in mind that that could be a source of funding for some of that transportation. I think best practice is not to just take the money and put it on our general fund and, everybody thinks it just disappears into the world. So last thing, you may have seen big, heavy equipment, toys and stuff at the culvert on Donegan, where every year we have a little bit of flooding. We're cleaning that culvert out and it's kind of a mess. And we got in there. And I think that, our public works team and these specialists that they hired to do nothing but this kind of stuff had all never really seen anything like that before. So we're probably going to be coming back to you at some point with a budget request to fix this. It might not be insignificant. It might get up into, six figures. That's why we carry funds in our capital projects fund. So this is sort of infrastructure. Yeah. I mean, it's a culvert and it goes underneath the road. And if we want to keep the road from crashing in, then yes, it's infrastructure. So Matt has taken me out there a couple of times to look at. It's kind of fascinating. So he is here if you want to know more about it, but I wanted you to know why that equipment is there.
If you guys do the thing.
Hold on one second, Erin.
If you guys do the thing with the tractor and the tire, I want to be there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like that, I would like to be noticed.
Chain and the tire.
Do a
Yeah.
combine tire.
I love that.
The tractor or the tire would explode. It is bad.
And it sounds like, Ryan, we're going to have to notice that meeting when we do it.
Most satisfying thing I've seen in TV in a while.
Totally. We know what we do on fun, like Friday nights.
That's it for me.
Thank you.
We touched on it briefly, the DRMS letter that will be going out tomorrow. I also just want to give you a heads up. I mean, we just appropriated that money. We have had some great successes with the mine, but I can't stress enough that we are anticipating that battle heating back up and becoming very front and center again. I'm very thankful for the partnership with the Citizens Alliance, with Roger Flynn, their attorney. So, we're moving forward on both the political front, on the legal front, on the PR front. All of that is going to become, I think, front and center and incredibly critical again. And so I know it has felt like we've had a series of successes. It is a long time since 2018 when this started, late 2017. But I think we're going to have an intense and difficult few years ahead of us to protect the community. And so I just want to kind of get that on the public's radar again, that it's still out there. We haven't won. We have great support out of our congressional delegation, I think. But we're going to have to keep after it. And so thank you for moving that money out of, appropriating that money so we have funds to spend, because we're going to need to on both legal and on probably some lobbying efforts back in DC. So with
Thank
that,
you.
thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you. Counselor Sims, did you have a
I
question?
just want to have a question for Carl. Where exactly does it stand right now? Which level of courts are we at with that? And what's the
Yeah,
next
we're,
expected step?
Yeah, so I mean, functionally, we're at no level of court right now on any particular issue. We anticipate the decision of BLM that the DCV, the determination of common variety, that this is just aggregate, it's not something special. We anticipate either that Interior will withdraw that letter, which will force us to sue in probably district court in the District of Columbia. For enforcement of that they need to go through a particular process to be able to revoke it, or that the company will appeal the decision, same process, different plaintiffs, them rather than us, on that decision as well. We anticipate that's going to be a big issue. We also just anticipate with the nature of the executive orders coming out, kind of pushing forward as fast as possible extraction and just the use of public lands purely as an economic driver, that we can get caught up in that, as well as you may remember David Bernhardt, former Interior Secretary, is now managing the transition for Interior and BLM. And so we also anticipate that those relationships that caused us problems in 2016 or 2018 will cause us problems again. Hence the work on the political side to try to establish relationships within the new Interior Department, as well as other places within the government, are going to be critical to us moving forward.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question? Okay, great. We do not have any correspondence this evening. So we'll allow Marco, go ahead.
Thank you. City Council reconvene at Dock Holidays tonight.
Thank you. As that is a publicly noticed event and all are welcome. Yeah, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, are you sure you wanted to? Did you want to vote yes on that one? I know, there have been times where you didn't support a motion to adjourn. Motion passes unanimously. Have a great night, all. Thank you so much.
Oh, right. Yeah, no.